because it was waiting. And because I was so scared of the doctor.
Why?
Because I've seen him. He's like fire and ice and rage. He's like the night and the storm in the heart of the sun. He's ancient and forever. He burns at the center of time and he can see the turn of the universe. And he's wonderful.
Hi. Don't worry, I'll keep this short. About a year ago, I decided to make an hour-long video essay on Doctor Who, my favorite TV show, and what I considered, and still consider to be the best TV show ever made. At least, it used to be. And will be again very soon. Lacking proper editing experience, writing experience, and voiceover experience, it was ultimately my love for Doctor Who and my love for Doctor Who alone that drove the video to its eventual completion and release on October 10th, 2020. And here's where I need to pause. You may have noticed that there's a funny little 8-letter word stitched onto the end of the title, and it's about time that we talked about what that entails. Obviously, I already made this video, so you may be curious as to why I'm remaking it. Well, that video essay was at least 5 trillion times more ambitious than the type of videos I was making before it, and it shows in some places. Having learned a lot about video essay production and script writing from producing further video essays, writing my own fan-made screenplays, and absorbing more of the video essay genre as a whole on YouTube, I have a greater appreciation for those that are far more talented in all these fronts. Those that composed themselves as a presenter of the medium the entire duration, did extensive research, and wrote comprehensive and articulate scripts to cover their desired subject. And my video essay, despite being comprehensive and using Doctor Who as a whole as the subject, only featured surface-level analysis of the show with a few articulate bright spots, misrepresentation or misunderstanding of the more niche details of Doctor Who, and not bothering to do the required research, and straight-up heretical slander for one nightmarish heresy of a chapter I can't believe people put up with. So, like a regular war doctor, I said, no more. We're gonna do this again. Doctor Who is a show that's so important to me, and it deserves to have a video essay that does it justice. Going forward, you guys can expect a far more concrete representation of Doctor Who as a show, and a far more engrossing and informative watch in the face of the infantile predecessor that this video was built from. Do I expect this video to perform as well as the old one? Well, miracles can happen, but I honestly doubt it just by the nature of the algorithm, and that's okay. I do plan on putting way more into this remaster, as you can tell by the proportionate runtime, with fully rewritten segments, entirely new segments, more intelligent conclusions, connections, deductions, and inferences akin to my video essayist brethren that share this platform with me, so it's up to you, the viewer, to spread the word. If you think this is the kind of video that deserves to be shared, by all means, share it. I'm not monetizing this video. You might notice that there's no mid-roll ads on that funny little red and gray line at the bottom. It's purely a passion project to give a show that changed my life and continues to inspire me to do bigger and better things the respect it deserves. And if you feel the things that I say in this video need to be shared, if it inspired you, educated you, or even moved you, it would mean the world to me if you shared it. But that's more than enough preamble. Let's get started. Some paragraphs will be overhauled, some will stay the same, everything will be re-edited, rescored, and have completely new voiceover. So, without further ado, let's begin. Doctor Who. It's almost an insult. God, my voice is so high-pitched I can't do it anymore. It's almost an insult to say that without a British accent. How did I do that before? Whatever. It's almost an insult. I literally can't make that sound with my voice anymore. An established pillar of British culture, a show that's been on the air for decades on end and is still going strong to this. Doctor Who is a British science fiction TV series that's been around for a while. It's a show that's existed since televised media became mainstream and has persisted, evolved, and otherwise survived against all odds for the better part of 50 years, nearing 60 years of Doctor Who in 2023. 60 years, how crazy is that? Despite being as old as Conan O'Brien, Doctor Who as a show is so little of what it has become in today's society. Transcending the casual nature of any normal TV show, Doctor Who has a cult fanbase that straight up borders on religion. Having been around for 50 years and exported to hundreds of countries excluding its birthplace, people of literally all ages have come together and bonded over this cheesy science fiction TV show that's been around since the 60s, myself included. And this is precisely what I would like to explore today. What elements of Doctor Who make it such a personal and important viewing for all that see it? How is every piece of the Doctor Who puzzle arranged in a way that creates an experience that stays with people forever? For me, Doctor Who is one of the most influential pieces of media I've ever experienced in my life, with its themes and messages carried with me through every waking breath. It is the single most valuable digital thing in my life to me, without a doubt. The show has a terrific and exciting premise dripping with possibilities, terrific and fleshed out characters, strong and creative sci-fi concepts, beautiful cinematography, superior acting from all of the main cast over the years, with a few special little Dickens giving particularly noteworthy performances, and themes that are grounded in reality that speaks lengths about good character, doing what's right, and having strong friendships. Today we're going to be exploring all of this, and also why the current era of Doctor Who doesn't work for me and so many others. So grab a soda, some popcorn, get comfy, because I'm about to shill everything that is Doctor Who. I hope you're ready. In critiquing shows, media, video games, whatever it may be, it often can be hard to get your tongue around the words to define what it is that you love about the experience, especially in a pitch to those who haven't seen it. That goes for Doctor Who. If someone told me that Breaking Bad was a show with characters that are constantly interacting and changing to create an edge-of-your-seat watching experience with episodes that all serve the larger thesis of the show with constant payoff everywhere you look, as opposed to, it's a show about drugs and a chemistry teacher, akin to what you might see on the Netflix summary, I might have jumped into it sooner. If someone told me that BoJack Horseman was a personal show about depression with characters that are all flawed in different ways and push each other to heartbreaking extremes and constantly hit new lows and grapple with their choices, with a main character as poisonous as he is sympathetic, with story beats and dialogue that apply and connect to me on deep levels that equate to a watching experience as relatable as it is torturous, as opposed to, it's a show about show business with funny talking animals, I would have watched it without a second thought. But how do we even describe Doctor Who? Doctor Who is a show that's about literally everything. Not a very good sell, is it? So let's start at the beginning, with the very, very, very basics of the show. Doctor Who revolves around the protagonist, the Doctor. That's his name. You get used to it. While he may look like a human, don't be fooled, he's actually a Time Lord, an alien race from the planet Gallifrey, although it's a spectacular coincidence that the race looks humanoid.
You look human.
You look Time Lord.
You look human.
No, you look Time Lord. We came first.
Actually, there's one big difference. He has two hearts. Yeah, that's right, a binary vascular system. It's pretty cool. Time Lord society can pretty much be divorced from the Doctor, as for most of the modern era, the Doctor is the last of his kind, survivor of what is known as the Time War, a war across time and space that left his home planet a burning cinder.
They're all gone now. My family. My friends. Even that sky.
Oh, you should have seen it, that old planet. The second sun would rise in the south and the mountains would shine.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. You may have looked at that big number earlier and been like, wow, 50 years without a hitch? That's impressive. Yeah, back when Doctor Who wasn't treated like the second coming of Christ, the TV landscape was a little less kind to science fiction serials, and also the scripts started to get a little terrible. Doctor Who got cancelled. For a while, 16 years in fact, before it was brought back to TV for a modern audience. Given the two eras are so different in terms of tone, budget, and quality, most fans split Doctor Who as a show into two different eras. The classic era spanning from its birth in 1963 to its cancellation in 1989, and the modern era spanning their revival in 2005 to the present day. They are referred to as Classic Who and Modern Who respectively, with the 16-year time gap separating them called the Wilderness Years, named that because the Doctor and current companion Ace at the end of Classic Who march off into the wilderness, and remained the final note Doctor Who fans were left on for the entire duration of the 16-year waiting period. And then Modern Who happened in 2005. And this will be most of the focus for the video essay. Not that Classic Who has nothing to offer, quite the contrary in fact. It's just, well... yeah, I'm not quite caught up yet. I love Classic Who. It's a bit dated, but it helps quite a bit if you watch it as though it were a stage play, rather than a cinematic TV epic that transports you to new and incredible worlds every week like its modern counterpart. And that's not even really a bad thing. The visuals barely matter. The themes, writing, and acting are the heart of the stories, and the quality of the staging are more like placeholders for your imagination to fill in the blanks. Approaching Classic Who from this angle makes watching and appreciating it far easier for me. I'm still working on it, of course, but I can see the heart behind it. The reason I'm not featuring it heavily in this video essay is because, for me, being an artist and someone who loves cinematography, I can really appreciate a director who knows how to make an episode look pretty. Especially Rachel Talalay, who directed the best episode of Doctor Who. Okay, I'm gonna stop now before I dedicate an additional 50 pages exclusively to Heaven Sent. And Classic Who, despite having impressive sets for the time until they weren't, just isn't presented as well. It's absolutely no fault of its own, but it's a big boundary for me in terms of closely analyzing the show, aside from the fact that I've barely dipped my toes in it. If you do want to learn more about both Classic and Modern Who, I'll be directing you to Clever Dick Films' Doctor Who Retrospective. It's long-form media criticism similar to videos like this, but made by an actually talented and educated person, and is such an enlightening watch. It's so good. Oh yeah, I was talking about Doctor Who's premise, wasn't I? Yeah, Doctor Who's continuity is long and elaborate, which can be quite daunting. But the stories themselves aren't really heavily serialized, and there are several jumping on points across the many series where new fans can jump in and get in on the action. And whilst we're on the topic, the wide format of the show as a whole is far more episodic than serial, although the series themselves do possess elements of serialization, and the lore of the show will occasionally have quota shifts in big impactful episodes, such as the previously mentioned Time War, but it doesn't affect a new person's enjoyment in just hopping in and enjoying the fun sci-fi romps that house the lore beats. For this reason, I've always seen Doctor Who as more episodic than serialized, but the serialization is still quite good. The episodic nature of the show is more pronounced by far, with the episode formats being the Doctor and his companions going to a location, whether it be past, present, or future, or any planet in the universe, and having an adventure, running from monsters, communing with locals, and learning lessons along the way. Their means of travel? Oh, only the most iconic vehicle in all of sci-fi, aside from maybe Back to the Future's DeLorean, the TARDIS.
No, this is hard to believe. I know you're not exactly a sci-fi person.
Time and relative dimension in space.
TARDIS, for short.
You're safe in here. You're safe in here and you always will be.
Yeah, it's a time machine. It functions as, well, you know, how you would expect a time machine to work, as well as functions as home for the Doctor and his companions. The TARDIS is a fantastic concept of science fiction, and it's honestly a testament to the show's longevity that the TARDIS's iconography is as well recognized as it has been for decades. Everything about the TARDIS's concept is amazing. A police box that's bigger on the inside, an idea that's science fiction enough to be impressive and magical, but real enough to make it so you feel as though you can reach out and touch it. It's bigger on the inside, and it makes perfect sense, both in and out of the show in terms of the blanks that our brains can fill out. We understand that the TARDIS is unfathomably massive and goes on for miles with hundreds of different and gorgeous rooms, and we can imagine what that exactly looks like, all of it packed into that tiny little box. Along with being a great science fiction concept, the TARDIS is also given a fair bit of characterization, and it's explained within the show on multiple occasions that the TARDIS is sentient. It's a living being, and it's given quite a bit of autonomy in the show, as much as you can for a giant blue box. And making the TARDIS sentient works as a narrative avenue for far more than the funny blue box doesn't like the companion. It also establishes a deep bond between the Doctor and the TARDIS. Both have been with each other for centuries. Both have been with each other for centuries, gone on hundreds of adventures together, and it seems nothing can make them part. Companions of all kinds have come and gone, but the Doctor and his box will always be together. They're an intellectual match for each other, sometimes banter and argue, but at the end of the day, they're connected far more than the human brain can fathom. Oh, also, a small thing, but I felt like bringing it up. The sound design is fantastic. Every TARDIS sound is ingrained into my DNA. Here, just listen to the sound. It's honestly stupid how emotional hearing that pulsing, deep humming can make me. It's just so close to home for me. That warmth, that coziness, it's never leaving me. I love it. The TARDIS is a fantastic component of Doctor Who, and its majesty and iconography is irreplaceable. Seeing this brilliant blue box on alien worlds and parked on the streets, it's iconic. You can strip away everything from Doctor Who, but no matter how hard you try, it's impossible to separate these two from the show's DNA. And it rules. Now, all the elements that fuel Doctor Who are in place. A Doctor and a companion, the TARDIS, and adventures throughout time and space. And that's exactly what the show delivers. Every week was another installment in the ongoing magic tale of the Doctor and his companions, and I think that's the most basic answer for why Doctor Who is so successful. That basic formula channels the inner 9-year-old in all of us, and only succeeds in hooking any actual 9-year-olds for the rest of their natural life, as was I when the young impressionable me sat down to watch Planet of the Dead with my dad, no idea what was to come. But that's for later. Doctor Who is an effective piece of television in many different regards, which is why nowadays the show is rather legendary, which only serves to boost its titanic iconography and widespread popularity. It's been around for multiple generations, and is the only time you'll be hearing stories from your grandparents about watching the program since its beginnings back in 1963 during a brand new episode that aired in 2021. In some cases, the show outlives its initial fan base, some people dying of old age long before the show would even come close to its end. And for many people in this generation, I think none of us will see a proper end to the show in our natural lives, and that's what's so great about it as well. It's a piece of media that exists out of time, much like the main protagonist does, wielding the power of time travel with a nonchalant swagger and unbearable charm. The show just keeps going. The reason for this, aside from the unbeatable formula, is that the show constantly evolves with each... God, my voice is shredded. The reason for this, aside from the unbeatable formula, is that the show constantly evolves with each decade, and that's obvious when one takes a crash course in the show. Every couple of years there's a new companion, a new TARDIS, new enemies, and, yes of course, a new Doctor. Another relic of Doctor Who's brilliance that effectively made the show immortal with ease is the fact that the Doctor can regenerate. The origin for the concept is such a well-known story at this point, it feels silly to even mention it, but for the sake of consistency, here we go. The first Doctor, and then only Doctor, played by William Hartnell, was originally hard to convince when signing on for the show all those decades ago. But once he was on for life. He fell in love with the program despite his declining health conditions. Nevertheless, his illness did impede the production of the show heavily, unbeknownst to the ecstatic Hartnell. Of course, this would not be a permanent fixture. Doctor Who was in the prime of its life with millions of fans. It was here that regeneration was conceived, and is brilliantly realized through 2013's An Adventure in Space and Time, which I love to bits, and what I consider to be the real 50th anniversary special. Regeneration successfully became a staple of the show, and simultaneously posed as a metaphor for how it's existed for so long. The show literally becomes something else while still containing that unbeatable formula that started it all. If one became tired of a certain format of the show, all one had to do was wait a few years and the show would shed its skin and become a brand new Doctor Who narrative, with its own unique display of likable characters, realized worlds, and creative sci-fi concepts to bring in children and adults alike. Other additions to the Doctor's roster of tools was the sonic screwdriver, introduced in Fury of the Deep, the second Doctor's second-to-last adventure. Back then, all it did was unscrew a screw, but as time has gone on, it's evolved into a master key for any door in the universe, aside from deadlock-sealed ones, of course.
I thought the sonic screwdriver could open anything.
Anything except a deadlock seal.
Also a new addition with the modern series was the psychic paper. It's essentially a little slip of paper that shows people whatever the Doctor wants them to see, as well as receives messages like a smartphone. These tools only serve to complement the unbeatable formula and mold to whatever the plot needs, and malleable tools are perfect for a show that's constantly in a state of flux. However, it's not just the demographic that makes the show so popular. It's not all numbers and values on a spreadsheet in order to make a satisfying compound of explosive television, although those elements are present. Like I said, it's an extremely complex show. There isn't anything quite like it. Therefore, we're gonna have to dig a little deeper. Going about critiquing Doctor Who, I find it imperative to start with the writing of the show above all else. Why? Well, because it's like the bones of the program. It's both its strongest trait and most integral piece of its inner workings. At the core of every single Doctor Who story, it's the writing that's fueling all of the pizzazz associated with the program. The way Doctor Who works, regenerating both the lead and the overall tone of the series with each regeneration, a few writers have gotten the highest honor of taking over as showrunner for a particular era. For the modern series, we've had 3. And one of them isn't like the other. Russell T Davies, who helmed the 9th and 10th Doctors, and Stephen Moffat, who helmed the 11th and 12th Doctors. We're just gonna tuck this guy away for later. As showrunners, they obviously oversaw all the creative decisions on the show, but also penned the majority of the stories of their particular era. Guest and recurring writers have been brought on historically for a few episodes, but all went through the filter that is the showrunner. And Doctor Who doesn't choose its showrunner lightly except for that one time that they did. For this reason, each era of the show has a concrete and concentrated depiction of both the lead and the recurring characters, referring to both companions and the supporting cast, like the Paternoster Gang of Series 7 or Donna's family of Series 4. Oh. Wilf. All are well written, and I'll get into the intricacies of that soon, but first, we're gonna start with the writing of the Doctor. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think the Doctor is the most complex, brilliantly written character in all of cinema, and I'm 100% taking into account that I love Heaven Sent more than anything on this earth. TV shows have had their own fair share of contenders for the best written character title, but for me, none come close to the Doctor for a laundry list of different reasons. For one thing, he's not even human. To write a convincing alien that reacts believably and intricately with human culture, a race that he is not a part of, yet also is intimately close to, is stupidly impressive, 50 years of character building aside. The Doctor is the perfect foil to humanity.
Why'd you put up with us then?
In amongst 7 billion is someone like you. That's why I put up with the rest of them.
Of course, it takes an alien to show us the beauty of being human. Those little things about life we grow to appreciate is what the Doctor loves about our species. Our complexity, our empathy, our passion. All are put under a microscopic lens when the Doctor is present. Because he's a foil in that regard, we connect with him more because of his affection toward us. That dynamic brings alien and human closer and closer to a point where a line is barely visible between the two.
Those people down there, they're never small to me. Don't make assumptions about how far I will go to protect them, because I've already come a very long way. And unlike you, I do not expect to reach the promised land.
He's protective over humanity and its purity because his own race was A, corrupt with total power, and B, completely extinct, so at a certain point you forget that the Doctor even is an alien. That connectivity and development through a script is the beauty of subtext, and Doctor Who is dripping with it. Despite being a comprehensive character in his own right, Doctor Who has never been above shaking up this character in a major way with any incarnation. Sometimes to great effect, and sometimes not so much. But what's impressive is how each incarnation can react and live in its own self-contained series and eras, yet also be pertinently relevant to the grand mythos that is Doctor Who. Each incarnation is different, but they're all a deeper and darker corner of the Doctor as a character. Same software, different case. This inherently makes the character mysterious, divorced from the fact that he's lived a dozen other lives, and is still the same person despite it. The expansive, titanic personality that is the Doctor is always present, lurking behind the eyes of every incarnation. The ancient god who's lived for millennia and seen as much to boot. The Doctor's a character who is defined by range, a man who can go from silly and eccentric to dark and cold in an instant. From immensely happy to confused or comforting or angry or sad. He's a cavalcade of emotion, a spectrum that we can apply to ourselves in comparison. A self-insert in some places and a complete and utter far cry in others. It's truly impressive how expansive the Doctor's vast character is, and the show almost always depicts that in a satisfying way. With a personality as vast as the Doctor's, the show has to check him constantly because of the immense power that he wields by nature of his existence. So because of this, the show makes the Doctor not only insanely powerful and temperamental, but instead a good and wise eccentric practicing heroism as much as he can, but is constantly challenged, beaten, and sometimes broken by his enemies, revealing the temperamental deity within. The Doctor has endured a lot of trials over his many adventures, and it's only by his nature that the character still remains brave and adamant in his morals. This concept of striving for heroism is immortalized in The Doctor's Moral Compass, something I've already made a standalone video essay on, but I'll paraphrase for the sake of covering all my bases in this video. The Doctor is a character defined by virtue. Despite having the capabilities to truly make his enemies suffer, he remains a pacifist character because of his morals. He believes that violence begets violence, that everyone deserves a second chance and an opportunity to be heard out. He understands where the aliens come from in the stories because he is one, and isn't prone to gunning down an alien threat without first understanding why, and if there's a peaceful way to bring about a solution. He is also a character who harbors a lot of wisdom, and intends to use his millennia of experience to convince the short-sighted of the universe to see reason. The Doctor also has no desire for self-preservation in terms of resolving a conflict. He's more than happy to lay down his life if it leads to a better tomorrow. This pacifistic and responsible moral code is the exact thing that is tested within the Doctor's character, and enemies are constantly waffling on about how the Doctor's cowardice and lack of commitment to pulling the trigger is flawed and weak through sympathy. Through beating and battering at the Doctor's values, the audience can see his heroism and dedication to standing strong as a role model of sorts to how we should never back down when it comes to doing the right thing, no matter the opposition or villainy we face.
Compassion, then.
Always.
It grows strong and fierce in you, like a cancer.
I hope so.
It will kill you in the end.
I wouldn't die of anything else.
And, again, I'm only paraphrasing, I made a whole video about this. When the Doctor does break in those rare instances, it strengthens the moral code to see an objectively inferior solution bring suffering and punishment. Exhibit A, the Waters of Mars. I'll be coming back to this episode later in the essay, but for the sake of this section, in terms of covering all my bases with the character, I may risk repeating myself in some way later on in the essay. Just know that later on, I'll be talking about why The Waters of Mars is one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who, while right now I'll be talking about how the themes of The Waters of Mars strengthen the Doctor's character. So, to save most of why this moment works for later on, we're going to skip ahead to what this moment means for the character as opposed to why it's an amazing, shocking, and heartbreaking moment in its own right. Because of what Captain Adelaide Brooke does in this scene, the audience sees that doing the morally inferior thing leads to loss and guilt, among other things. It's a moment that works within the context of the show, as well as being applicable to people's lives outside of the show. A person can watch this episode for the first time, understand the rules of the episode, and watch it all fall apart and say, wow, the Doctor really shouldn't have done that, despite how much not doing it would have hurt him. Clearly, it is more important than ever that the Doctor's moral code is not forgotten by him. And another person can watch the same episode under the same context and go, wow, that was a really compelling showcase of how making the right choice is sometimes insanely hard and heartbreaking. This episode's themes have applied directly to my own life in an extremely personal way. I will never be the same again. Obviously, that's a dramatized version. Both people would probably just go, oh my god, that episode was good, realistically. But in all seriousness, The Waters of Mars helps us understand that the choices we get presented in our own lives are oftentimes extremely suffocating. It teaches us that when we similarly reach a crossroads of morality, to not go the way the Doctor does. To not be called by the siren song of personal weakness or cowardice, since the weakness most often breeds bad decision-making or regret. To dedicate yourself to being a strong person is a long and hard battle that you fight for your entire life, and it can be tempting to give in and act selfishly from time to time. Through Doctor Who, we can see that appealing to weakness is to break as a person, and that we should always practice impressive feats of endurance as we tackle the issues within our own personal lives day in and day out. We should strive to be better than the Doctor in this moment, no matter how hard it may be. This is, without a doubt, one of the most important Doctor Who stories to me based on this one theme alone. And it has an unending catalog of so many other great things that I'll be talking about, I don't know, like in 30 minutes. So yeah, The Waters of Mars is awesome and focuses on one of the most compelling character traits of the Doctor. That, despite his best efforts, the Doctor cuts a lonely figure for himself, loving and losing for years on end. It's a depressing prospect to be sure, but if the Doctor can keep chugging along, so can we. The importance of the Doctor and his character within our society remains as fierce as it has been for decades, for both the people within the show and in real life. When you have 50 years of canon to muddle through, it takes a lifetime to understand the character, let alone take him to new depths, which is why I love Stephen Moffat so much as a Doctor Who writer, for the simple reason that he understands the Doctor so much. And to have the wombo combo of Best Doctor Writer and Best Doctor Actor of Capaldi and Moffat is another reason I love Heaven Sent so much. And even though we have all-time highs in Heaven Sent, and essentially Capaldi in general, every single version of the Doctor is brilliant in their own way. I've never seen a more subjective opinion in my life that can hold a candle to a favorite Doctor ranking list. As far as I'm concerned, every single incarnation of the Doctor is good. Even Colin Baker, who was the Doctor during the show's most strenuous time period, I actually like. Even though he strangled his companion and is also super rude and stuff, I think he's unbearably funny.
We'll pile the heads of our enemies before us like melons in a heap. I would enjoy that. What? I like.
He's not near my favorite, of course, but I do not think any particular incarnation of the Doctor is even close to bad. Even John Hurt, a man who is only the Doctor in one episode, is incredible.
They are the Doctor.
You're the Doctor too.
Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame. Go back to your lives. Go and be the Doctor that I could never be. Make it worthwhile.
How can you people not love this incarnation? Hey, tell you what. Just for fun, let's rank him right now. When else am I gonna have the chance? Just throwing that out there. Have fun in the comments. And since we're kinda getting into Doctor-specific stuff here, I figured I'd take a look at a really complex issue in the Doctor's massive personality that remains a fierce point of contention to this day. So let's have a real debate of this, it should be fun. Should the Doctor be a romantic? Specifically, should a love story centering around the Doctor and his companion be explored? And, I really need to clarify that the fact that we can even talk about this stuff as fans is amazing. The complexity is really the beauty of it, and clearly, I have my stance and you have your stance. You agree in some ways, disagree in others. I have insane respect for these two. I love what they've done with Doctor Who, and could never in a million years dream of writing some of the things that they have. These are elements that I don't love because it was never really a way that I connected with the show. I connected with the Doctor because of his eccentricity and sadness, his inner turmoil and explosive, writhing personality. What a compelling vessel he is, and clearly Doctor Who's writers agree with me. But the romance isn't compelling to me. This angle of Doctor Who is the strangest thing to me in terms of why it happened. I mean, let's think about this. The Doctor is an ancient and wise, nearly immortal alien. Romantic connection, especially with humans who are pretty much as close to mortal as it gets, is interesting in the ways that the show explores. The whole thing that it's doomed from the start, so it's all sad in that facet. The curious part for me is why this had to be explored in romance in all of the possible ways that it could have been explored in. It steps on a few character traits of the Doctor that I feel are more compelling. The first and most superficial is that the Doctor has always been portrayed as asexual. Of course, elements of the Doctor's character can change, like that one time that they very clearly changed that for a particularly handsome incarnation, but most Doctors have been asexual to all species, human being one of them. Secondly, the Doctor is nearly immortal. The implications are that he cannot spend his life romantically with any other living beings because he will simply outlive them. And it's a compelling avenue of lore to be sure, but why did it have to be romance? Immortal angst can and is told in Doctor Who in other ways and better ways than something as tacked on, cliché, and forced as romance. And in a lot of ways, I honestly find it embarrassing that a show that's so fantastical and unique did something as boring as giving the handsome main character an attractive sidekick that he's in love with. Series 2 did it, and Series 7B did it, and they're my two absolute least favorite series because of it. The Doctor doesn't need it to be interesting because the very thing that makes him unique is that he exists as a character above what we as humans can identify. To see the Doctor doing human romance stuff doesn't make him easier to understand as a character, but rather simplifies his intricacies and vaporizes the subtext, in my opinion. And the things that Doctor Who fails at don't really matter because it's a matter of commitment. Doctor Who tells a love story featuring a lonely, handsome romantic and I look away because it's not what I like. But that's not the point. It's well written and ripe with subtext, and most importantly, not for me. It's for, teenage girls. And I can look at that as a fan of the 900-year-old asexual demigod who has no time for petty human love and be like, that's unfortunate that they went in that direction. But still enjoy the story at large because it's still Doctor Who and it's still the Doctor. It's witty and smart and personal in all of the ways that I love it, with, unfortunately, some elements that aren't totally Doctor Who in my opinion. Romance is certainly done in Doctor Who in very good ways, more on that later, but in regards to the Doctor, I think other traits do what this was trying to do far better and far more consistently with how I feel the Doctor as a character would act. The living forever, befriending and losing, friendship is a strong enough bond to make it heartbreaking, and it is heartbreaking time and time again. And I think the romance does nothing but distract me in the end from the characterization of both Rose and Clara, the big culprits, as well as the Doctor. I can't see it appealing to anyone other than teenagers who are in love with David Tennant's gorgeous jawline or Jenna Coleman's pretty face. That's genuinely how I feel. But the character rises above all that. All the amazing traits I've talked about before really do cancel this out, and then some. And even then, I can absolutely tolerate it for what the show means, what the character means, and all the amazing things Doctor Who brings to television. All of this, all I've said, it matters more, and it makes this matter not at all. And that's the way it should be. There's something for everyone in the Doctor, and that's really the point. It's why the character endures, why he stays prominent and important and revered by everyone. All that the Doctor is about is indicative of our world, our people, and he's a vessel to strive for, to identify with, to distance from, and to learn from. He's shown you the importance of intelligence, humility, humanity, bravery, responsibility, abnormality, expressivity, hospitality, sincerity, and vulnerability time and time again. His importance is insurmountable and indescribable. The Doctor is Doctor Who's highest achievement, most grand success, and I have no doubt that people will agree with me here. Finally, moving away from the Doctor, we now get to focus on the side characters of the show, more specifically, the companions. And rather than giving 1 or 2 sentence summaries of these characters like I did in my first video essay, we're gonna go deep. And I mean deep into each one of these characters, starting with my absolute favorite companion and working my way down from there. And to nobody's surprise, my absolute favorite companion in Doctor Who is the Lord and Savior himself, Wilfred Mott, played by Bernard Cribbins. God, this man is so perfect in every way. I think everyone is lying to themselves by not putting this man at number 1 on every companion ranking list. So let's look at this. What defines a good character, and how does Doctor Who do it well? Well, in writing a character, it all begins and ends with consistency. A character is given realistic traits and the story maintains that vision, and we can break the writing into its own subdivisions, the character itself and the way the story introduces the character traits and continues to develop the character within the fabric of the stories as the season goes on. This is called characterization. Doctor Who does this extremely well thanks to the award-winning writers behind it all, making character traits, character flaws, linking them together in a real way and building on them akin to how an actual person might react. It's insanely important that the characters within the show never break this illusion, because as audience identification figures, they should be, well, identifiable. If the humans don't act like humans, how am I as a viewer supposed to get invested in the human drama surrounding them? And even more so, those strong character traits and realistic depictions have to be smoothed over, integrated into the story, and not be unnatural or forced. For example, a writer creates a companion that's a starving artist waiting for a big break. The Doctor takes him or her aboard and the series begins. That companion's hopes and dreams dictate the way they'll react to the colossal alien beauty. The small intricacies of their entire life are pertinent to their every word. An artist might be starstruck by the vast beauty and have a strong desire to capture it. The gorgeous scenery of far-off alien worlds may render them speechless, and their solitude introverted artist personality may want a few moments alone within the alien world to truly feel one with and absorb the circumstances that surround them. If the character went, "Wow, this is an alien world, how smashing," that would be bad characterization. While the character may have strong traits, because the characterization fails, the character fails on the fundamental basis: consistency. Your character has to be consistent. Everything they do characterizes them, and you cannot flub that, because the illusion gets destroyed. They aren't a real character anymore. Luckily for Doctor Who, they've nipped this one in the bud, thanks in part to the stupidly smart writers employed that have grown up with the show. Most, if not all, of the main characters in Doctor Who have been given the love and attention they deserve as characters, with Wilf being the best. But why is that? Why does this small background character from Series 4 get all of my unending praise? Because he's just adorable. No, he just checks both boxes and then some. He's a strong character with a rich and intimate past and is characterized very well. A kindly, spunky old man who's lived and learned, but isn't above having a bit of fun. He's a bit of a goofball, but also has some emotional depth to him. But honestly, the surface level funniness is gripping enough to sell me. I mean, who could forget these classic Wilf moments?
There's keen eyes up there, and they're watching us, and they're not friendly.
Dad, take those things off.
No, I shan't. It's Christmas. It's gone dark. It's them aliens. I'll bet my pension. What do you want this time, you green swine?
Dad.
Look, you get back inside, Sylvia. They always want the women.
Dad, please come home. They're leaving our street alone.
Yeah, I've got a weapon.
It's a paint gun.
Exactly. Them Dalek things, they've only got one eye. A good splodge of paint, they'd be blinded.
You will come with me.
Will I, Eck?
And thank God we got Wilf as a full-fledged companion in the End of Time parts, and thank God he is the emotional crux of that entire story, because boy does his character deserve it. Hearing stories about his life during the Second World War, how he never took a life, how scared he was to pull the gun on the Master. He's the only supporting character that loves the fact that Donna gets the opportunity to travel in time. He respects the Doctor and cares for him as if he was his own son, which is obviously spelled out in Tennant's last episode. We see Wilf cry a lot, and we connect with him more than any other character, I feel, because we see everything about him, and it is so real. That's what good character work can do, and Wilf is kind of a benchmark for most characters in the show. And right behind him is none other than his granddaughter, Donna, one of Doctor Who's finest characters. She's characterized as an older woman at a dead-end, unfulfilling job. She's a bit irritable, a bit loud, a bit spiky, but has a soft interior that she keeps strongly guarded. In The Runaway Bride, she's ungrateful and self-centered, appearing to find the Doctor annoying and a nuisance for most of their screen time. This was mainly due to her being treated as a one-off for comic relief, and that's the purpose she serves. But it's a testament to Russell's writing that even here the depth is visible. Even for this one-off, a fully formed character was made and given an arc, making her perfect pickings to come back as a full companion in Series 4. And as that series goes on, the Doctor wears away at her defensiveness and they get on quite well. We start to see how her unique character could bring a legendary dynamic to the TARDIS. She actively challenges Ten, which is so refreshing after 2 seasons of companions making googly eyes at Tennant. She's sensitive, understanding, and caring when it matters, and has the strength and iron to put her foot down when the Doctor doesn't do things her way. And through this, these 2 fantastic characters do a brilliant ballet of great banter, moral quandaries, and supremely funny dialogue through having the Doctor and Donna's mouthy and challenging characters just interact with each other in the story. Through this, both the Doctor and Donna are refined. The Doctor gets knocked down a few pegs and Donna gets exposed to new and empathetic perspectives, causing her to humble herself and become a better person. By the finale, she's hardly the character we first met in The Runaway Bride, which makes it all the more tragic that she loses her memories and regresses as a character back to square one. She remains one of Doctor Who's greatest, and her fantastic depiction makes Series 4 one of the show's greatest series as well. After Donna, I'm gonna go with... oh god. Amy and Rory. If you want me to actually rank them, I'd honestly probably put Rory first, but I'm going to talk about them at the same time. They're both excellent in all the ways that Donna was, but brilliant in a whole new way. They portray one of Doctor Who's square pegs for me in a good way. Romance. Why does it work? You know why it works. My words are wasted. So anyways, Amy is characterized as a confident, energetic, and sexy, but not in a male-gazy way. Or indeed in a male-gazy way if that's how you feel. I don't, because this obligatory sexiness is only around in a few scenes, which makes me think it was used for characterization. That Amy isn't afraid to be forward or outwardly confident, which is a character trait that stayed for the series' length. Anyways, I got a bit sidetracked there. Amy is written confidently and youthfully. She's inquisitive but a bit vulnerable, clever and aware but not stepping on the Doctor's massive intellect, mainly focusing on the little bits that the Doctor misses. She's always down to take a threat head on, do some running, and put up a good fight. She's got a voice, and by God, people are gonna hear it. She's swept off her feet by the oblivious 11th Doctor, and through her TARDIS adventures, her dedication to Rory, her fiancé, is tested and strengthened. She's constantly challenged in her loyalty to Rory, but learns time and time again that the superficial aspects are less important than the deep, intimate parts. Parts that Rory delivers in strides with. He's heroic but a bit dopey, funny and sarcastic, and loyal to Amy until the end. It's through his unending love for Amy that he develops great confidence and strength. He's her hero, but it isn't egregious. He's driven by compassion for Amy, and Amy, while unwilling to outwardly reciprocate that, deep down loves Rory immensely. Through the adventures on the TARDIS, Rory and his dedication to Amy is always at the forefront of his decisions. They're inseparable. Their values are always consistent. They're a couple that are so intimately and realistically written, it hurts. The stories continue and they get closer and closer together. They ride or die for another, and it eventually leads to their end. They go out together twice. And if that isn't a true test of their loyalty, I don't know what is. After them, I'm actually gonna go for Clara. Clara's kinda weird. First off, there's 3 of them. And of the series that modern Clara is the main companion of, I think Clara in series 8 and 9 had the most interesting dynamic because of this idiocity. Clara honestly brings something so unique to Doctor Who, specifically because of her amazing chemistry with Capaldi in these seasons, and how it all lined up in that way after Matt Smith's regeneration. This companion, who was written as a mystery box with a pretty face to flirt with the handsome Time Lord and the harsh asexual Scott, who is constantly fighting to retain dominance in the companionship, is just fantastic. It's the Donna relationship in the ways that these two are constantly opposing each other, specifically in Series 8, but it's taken to an 11. Donna and 10 bicker about silly things, and that's the fun of it. But Clara is shaken, and 12 is shaken too. Both are on the fringes, desperately trying to gauge the other but can't. This is a wholly more volatile relationship. The fun is fun, the banter is fantastic and refreshing, but when the Doctor messes up, boy does it strike a chord. Clara isn't a character who's just going to stand on the sidelines. She's characterized as extremely confident and able to keep up with the Doctor in a way that any other companion could not. She's stupidly independent, a character trait that she's picked up and emulated from the Doctor. She's by far the most successful in terms of being a companion, but that's precisely where her flaw exists. She takes it a bit too far, too confident, too reckless. The bond that she and 12 develop through their unending adventures makes the moment where they realize that this has gone too far become so heartbreaking. They push each other to stupid extremes because they both consider themselves dominant in the relationship. It's a great relationship that's written so well, and despite what people will tell you, I think Clara genuinely remains on the better end of Doctor Who's companions. That control freakishness is without a doubt her Achilles heel, as well as her strongest character trait. And it's quite an inventive mix. Geez. Next up, let's have, Bill. A youthful, spunky, and empathetic character that's taken on by the Doctor after seeing a spark of wonder in her. She's a back-to-basics companion, but offers something fresh to the formula. She's lesbian, obviously, and this gives her a whole new set of eyes through which she sees the world in some ways, and in others it stays totally the same. She has insane agency and flair, asking a lot of questions, but is more interested in the implications around the answer rather than the answer itself. Nothing is black and white, yes and no, right or wrong when it comes to the universe. I think the thing with Bill is that so much of her is self-explanatory. I suppose most of the beauty is the naivety and how Pearl Mackie plays her. The mouthy and inquisitive performance is just perfect, and 12, Bill, and Nardole is a great trifecta of characters, and the contrast between them makes for the best dialogue. As Bill progresses, learning about the universe, providing 12 with a new and energetic perspective after the deep baggage that was both the death of Clara and River, Bill learns to hold on to who she is. The concept of personality becomes a prime question of the finale, and Bill, a fiercely passionate character, incites a lot of great questions about what we define as humanity, with all of it based in her down-to-earth, slice-of-life character. As an audience identification figure, it really doesn't get better than Bill. Next, we'll have Martha. She's characterized as a bit more old-school smart, being a doctor of medicine, obviously. She's a person who's worked hard to get to where she is, or at least tried to make a name for herself by being a problem solver. And while Martha was a victim of some of the more unfortunate doctor-companion dynamics, I think Martha really stands out in her sheer amount of grit and capability. Martha hardens with her adventures in the TARDIS to a heartbreaking degree. Throughout Series 3, Martha's TARDIS adventures are closer to a gauntlet of progressively harder challenges, which only makes the continuation that she becomes a unit soldier in Series 4 all the more compelling and also tragic, the Doctor and his meddling being the reason for this decision. While Martha still got in on the wonder and excitement, she also exemplifies the difficulty of TARDIS life, and Martha was always capable in a pinch. It's the crux of the finale, and her character's iron and determination against the odds truly makes her feel unique. And at the same time, she isn't really characterized as the tough one. She's more sarcastic and wonder-filled, obviously a fan of Tennant's puppy dog eyes, but she's far more willing to literally jump in, roll up her sleeves, and help as many people as she can, more than any other companion. I think of 42 immediately, where she just, at the drop of a hat, decides to help this random guy get to the bridge and take control of the ship out of the company of the Doctor. And Chris Chibnall wrote that one. Obviously it has other problems, but the characterization is not one of them, I think. At least for these two. And then, Rose. Wow, this looks really bad. To be fair, I did say that all the main companions in Doctor Who are well characterized, and Rose is no exception, and I hope that we can be mature and recognize that even if she's my least favorite big main companion, she's still phenomenally characterized. Rose is Modern Who's first companion, and for some people, that means she's the best. I disagree, but that's okay. Characterized as empathetic and caring, but naive and short-sighted, Rose enters the Ninth Doctor's life post-Time War trauma, providing him with a positive influence. She's a character that gets introduced to TARDIS life and never looks back. Completely discontent with her life up to that point, she up and leaves to dedicate herself fully to this Time Lord stranger. Why?
I love you.
Yeah, but she's pretty well characterized, having a lot to say in any given situation, occasionally butting heads with the Doctor, but mostly just a helpful, lively companion. It's purely a symbiotic relationship with these two, and is every bit as addicting for both parties. The show mostly acknowledges this with a few missteps, so in the end, we get like a 70% in terms of what I like in a Doctor Who companion, with the entire missing 30% being from this constant flirting. Rose in Series 1 is so well characterized, and Series 2 Rose is why she's down here. But again, still a great character, because they're all great. Doctor Who's characters and how they react in the sci-fi sandbox is absolutely its strongest element in my opinion. Obviously, the Doctor blows me away and keeps me coming back to the show, but even the recurring and mainstay supporting cast have something to offer to the formula, and leave me with a watching experience where I've truly learned something about myself through the characters and their world. And that's what it's all about. There's always a golden rule I've kept when I watch a film, or anything really. A piece of media is at its best when it leaves you with a lasting impact. That doesn't mean something has to necessarily be political or educational to leave a lasting impact. In fact, my favorite kind of lasting impact is getting absorbed in a world and its characters because the conflicts they face are relatable, believable, or compelling. Consistency is key, but my actual favorite lasting impact is a subcategory of a fleshed out world, and I've already mentioned it. Subtext. For example, let's take two amazing games, Half-Life 2 and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Both are incredible games with incredible worlds and unmatched storytelling. I mean, there's a reason these two are the most talked about games when it comes to the best games of all time. However, the reason Half-Life 2 is at number 7 on my top 10 favorite games and Ocarina of Time is at number 1 is subtext. Half-Life 2 succeeds by being committed to its thesis, the idea that players should feel part of a story as opposed to watching an interactive movie, on top of having good characters, perfect pacing, strong elements of mystery, and an epic scope. Ocarina of Time succeeds by having a story about childhood that slowly evolves into a story about growing up and coming of age. The difference, if it wasn't immediately obvious from those sparse cliff notes, is that with Half-Life, the lore is written in ink. The events that take place are exactly how they're taken at a glance. Of course, it goes deeper from there, and Half-Life's world building is without a doubt the best in the business, but with Ocarina of Time, the story is built on strong and ever-changing themes. The way the characters and Link himself grows in the story is crafted to keep you thinking. And again, if any game makes you think, it would be Half-Life 2, but so much is left up to interpretation in Ocarina of Time in comparison. The simplistic format in the story is specifically made to make you feel, to insert yourself into Link's story and grow and change with him. How does that make you feel as a player? These are the feelings that video games should be made for, and both of these games are just choice in the entire genre. Ocarina's story follows maturity in a way that meshes perfectly with its realized world, puzzle solving, compelling narratives, and dynamic gameplay to successfully solidify it as the best story in video games, in my opinion. That shouldn't take anything away from Half-Life's incredible world. I mean, the game speaks for itself. It's just that I connect with a malleable subtext a bit more than a really, really solid world. I like Half-Life, by the way. If you weren't picking up where I'm going with this, Doctor Who is subtext central, which makes its overarching narrative something I always come crawling back to. Because the character of the Doctor is so 12-dimensional, a story that he inhabits has like 144 dimensions. There are so many good Doctor Who stories, but we're gonna zero in on two masterpieces here, and I've already mentioned both of them, Heaven Sent and The Waters of Mars. Let's save the best for last, shall we?
Let's go.
In this episode, we get treated to something extremely unique, in the fact that the Doctor kinda loses it a little in this episode.
And I'm gonna win! Anyone?
Yeah, just a little. Okay, jokes aside, this script is so grown up. I cannot applaud these writers enough for this story. In a Doctor Who Confidential interview, David Tennant said something that made me value this episode leagues more.
What's exciting about a story like this is that with a series which is ongoing and a character who must be essentially unchanging, is that there's a limit to what you can do with that character. You know, he kind of pretty much always has to win the day and pretty much always has to be reset to zero at the end of every story. And we're in the sort of unique position now because we know that the 10th Doctor story is coming to an end, where we can start being a little bolder with that. We can start telling stories about this character that you can only tell once.
This story is a one-time thing. We will never see something like this again from Doctor Who. It can only ever happen at the tail end of this story. All this build-up, all this tension the Doctor endures, this is the climax of all of that and comes at a very logical time in the narrative. So what's the gist here? The Doctor lands on Mars in the near future and gets tangled up in the affairs of the first outer space colonists ever. Obviously, these people are very famous, and the Doctor knows who they are, but the audience doesn't. The audience should be like, oh, why do I care? But the world building and writing specifically puts these characters at the center of a huge domino effect. So before long, the audience knows how important these characters are to the future of humanity. We understand the stakes. Then the deadlock seal in this whole fiasco is the Doctor's comment here.
I really should go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry with all of my heart. But it's one of those very rare times when I've got no choice.
This is a fixed point in time. We saw this previously in the fires of Pompeii. The idea being that some events in time are simply too important to meddle with, such as the Pompeii tragedy, and of course, Bowie Base 1's destruction. These people die today, and that is just how it is. Nothing can be done. Anyways, more hijinks ensue, the Flood appear and start killing people. The doomsday clock is ticking at this point. The Doctor continues talking himself into sticking around despite the circumstances throughout the episode because he loves these people and can't bring himself to abandon them at the end of their lives. Fast forward a bit more and the crew discover the Flood and decide to flee the Mars base with their lives. Captain Brooke, who had been unsure of the Doctor's agenda for the whole runtime, finally allows him to leave. In fact, she orders him to do so. All the crew dash around carrying cargo to the escape rocket as the Doctor watches, and this moment is so powerful. The Doctor is so torn inside. He watches the crew panic to escape, frozen, desperately wanting to act. Tennant's acting, jeez. And yes, this is acting, just standing there. It's incredible. The audience kinda expects him to try and do something, but he doesn't, and this is a logical character progression for Ten. Everything he does just makes it happen. We see that in the fires of Pompeii, so he expects that if he does interfere, all that will lead to is more anguish. He has no choice but to walk away. As the Doctor attempts to leave out of the airlock, it seems Captain Brooke could read his expression. She's gotten wise and confronts the Doctor in the airlock, and he has no choice but to tell her their fate with a heavy heart. I suppose this is a good time to bring this up since we're kinda talking about characters. The characters in this story are fantastic, and I think this one line from Roman sums it up perfectly.
Mia, strip the cargo down to essentials. Roman, on your feet.
But we came all this way.
This poor kid. Out of all of Doctor Who's one-off characters, these are without a doubt what I believe to be the best. They're all smart and capable, wise to their circumstances immediately, have a ton of humanity, and are all unique and interesting, which is important because we need to see that staggering contrast when they all die. Captain Brooke and Ed just being fantastic, and their dynamic is just as great. Captain Brooke being overbearing to him because he's the most ambitious and likely to do something stupid and on impulse, and Ed frustrated by those confines, only wanting to help as much as he can. The tragedy of these characters, being that they're so passionate about what they do, is where this episode's pathos really shines. They overcame trials and tribulations to get here, and it's being taken away by sheer circumstance. Captain Adelaide Brooke, the main supporting character of this episode, is so strong, literally and metaphorically. She's characterized as intelligent and rational, but a tad overbearing when it comes to her crew. You can respect her careful decisions because they are on Mars after all, and there can be no room for error, as well as identifying with the trauma that made her the way she is today. Her entire bloodline is pertinent to this story's canon, with a lot to be said about the morality of time travel, something that Doctor Who has historically been pretty loosey-goosey about. She's brave and pragmatic, takes a plethora of precautions, but isn't afraid to take a stand for something she detests. What a character to focus on indeed. At the start of the episode, we sympathize with the Doctor's dilemma, but as the story goes on, she becomes the voice of reason. A well-realized character that still has a fear of dying, which is incredibly sensible given the situation.
Help me.
I can't.
Why can't you find a way?
I swear I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't.
She reacts very realistically, but ultimately understands that if there was something to be done, he would have done it, and releases him. The Doctor hikes back to the TARDIS, still tapped into the crew comms. He is forced to listen to their dying screams like nails on a chalkboard. If he was gonna do something, it's already too late. Steffi gets cornered in a room, Roman is killed by a stray water droplet, and Ed gets infected while attempting to escape in the rocket. He is forced to commit suicide in order to stop the Flood's plans of hijacking the rocket. It's a heroic sacrifice on Ed's part, with one last good deed to save the Earth. Upon rocket detonation, the Doctor is knocked to his feet. He turns around, fire engulfs his surroundings, and he goes back and... Wait, what? He's going back? But this is a fixed point. Can he even save them? What'll happen? Can he even pull it off? What is going on? This is amazing! Like I showed in the intro, the Doctor has utterly had enough with this fixed point nonsense that he's had to put up with. The Time Lords are dead. Why should he? It's truly a selfish moment for the Doctor, but is totally earned after being completely responsible for his whole life. That doesn't make him right, let me be clear, but it is an earned character moment. Then, all of a sudden, Brooke activates Action 5 and is gonna nuke the whole base for the sake of time. Someone has to stop the Doctor from destroying the whole of history, and she'll do whatever it takes to ensure that he will be stopped. He barely does it and puts his own life on the line, but manages to save what little survivors there were.
When he arrives on Earth, it's a different man. There's an arrogance about him. There's a superiority about him. He is superior in many ways. He's not. In many ways, he's just becoming what he could be.
Isn't anyone going to thank me?
So you see him almost looking at the humans with contempt, like almost enjoying the fact that he's more learned than them. He's got more knowledge, and loving the fact that he's rewritten history.
Don't you get it? This is the 21st of November, 2059. Same day on Earth.
So he's on a very, very dangerous path as he steps out that TARDIS because he's becoming omnipotent, and that's not good.
No one should have that much power.
Tough.
That's how I imagine someone like the Master became the Master, was by taking all the power a Time Lord has and using it and exaggerating it until there's no going back.
A Time Lord victorious.
And there's no one to stop you.
And where that might lead is almost impossible to quantify. I mean, if he's willing to do this, then what's to stop him going back into the Time War? What's to stop him going back and filling Donna's mind again? What's to stop him going back and making sure Rose never goes into the alternative universe? There's so many things open to him now. He's literally ripping time apart.
Suddenly, this Time Lord Victorious becomes this terrifying figure. Adelaide could see it because she's watched the Doctor throughout the story.
Eventually, Adelaide realizes she's being forced to act. The Doctor right now is truly unstoppable. I mean, think about it. Through one final attempt to spite the Doctor and snap him back into it, She kills herself in her home, and geez, the editing here is perfect. Graham Hopper really knows how to sell this repeating moment stuff to make this impact last, and the music as well. The impact hits the Doctor right between the eyes, and he realizes that what he's done and led to is truly terrible. That someone had to kill themselves just to crack his arrogance. He learns the most valuable lesson: with great power comes great responsibility, despite the circumstances. It is absolutely brilliant, and a whole new low for the character. There will never be another Doctor Who episode like this.
Let's go!
Before we start, I think it's important to point this out. Heaven Sent is so much of an undisputed masterpiece that it has its own separate track listing in the Series 9 soundtrack, separate from both the rest of Series 9 and the finale, Hellbent. That alone should tell you all that you need to know. Listen, oh yeah, this is when my camera comes on. Listen, I could sit here and tell you why Heaven Sent is my favorite episode. I could just praise the music, the cinematography, the directing, the acting, the writing, the subtext, the themes, the set design. I could just praise and praise until the sun goes down. So the episode opens with a monologue from Peter Capaldi. As you'll quickly realize, this monologue extends for the full 50 minutes and doesn't end until the end credits, so if you wanted the high concept box ticked on a Doctor Who episode, don't worry, Heaven Sent's got you covered. For this first chunk of Capaldi's episode-long monologue, he speaks about some mysterious thing that follows you until you die.
You will run. It will walk. You will rest. It will not. One day, you will linger in the same place too long. You will sit too still or sleep too deep. And when, too late, you rise to go, you will notice a second shadow next to yours. Your life will then be over.
Immediately, there are 3 different interpretations for what this thing could be, and only one of them is spelled out. These 3 interpretations are the Veil, the creature that attacks the Doctor throughout the episode, the Doctor himself as he declares during the cold open transition to title card,
I am the Doctor. I'm coming to find you, and I will never, ever stop.
and the final and more hidden answer is that this nameless thing is death itself. This catapults us into the themes and subtext running throughout the episode. The Doctor is trapped in a castle with mysterious properties, whilst a creature tracks his every move, never faltering. Conflict with the enemy is inevitable, and should the Doctor hope to survive an encounter with the Veil, the only way to stop it is to confess his secrets. A true challenge for a character like the Doctor, deeply entrenched in mystery. The Doctor must use his intellect and wit to escape the castle, all the while operating in the wake of the death of Clara. There are many reasons to watch this episode. The beautiful cinematography, seriously, it's beautiful. Capaldi's terrific acting.
Sorry I'm late. Jumped out of a window.
The great sci-fi concept, its place in the Series 9 narrative as the penultimate episode, but what I want to cover are its themes because, in a way, it's the most important part of any work of cinema that's trying to strive for something. Themes are the roots of cinema. Heaven Sent's theme is death, or more specifically, dealing with a traumatic death. Because this episode happens directly after Face the Raven, a story where Clara dies at the hands of the Raven after overstepping her capabilities and trying to be like the Doctor, there are several thematic ripples that seep into this story. Chief among them, the sorrow and grief that occurs in the immediate impact of a terrible tragedy, and the story holds no punches in portraying it as the devastating traumatic event that it is. This story in general is one big metaphor, which takes moments that work on their own as a terrific message about loss on top of being strong Doctor Who stuff, most notably the climax of the story. The Doctor realizes that in order to escape the castle without confessing about the hybrid, will force him to revive a copy of himself over and over to slowly but surely chip away at the Spantium wall. The subtext in this instance is that the Doctor chipping away at the wall is how the process of grief feels. Trapped in a cycle, repeating the same actions, trying to move on when it feels so impossible, with the Spantium symbolizing moving on. Freedom from the cycle. The castle itself being described as a torture chamber also doubles on how life can feel like torture when in deep anguish. And there's only one real moment when the script straight up addresses this fact, and this moment is, surprise surprise, amazing. Firstly, a moment where the Doctor actually breaks down. After keeping up a facade of bloodthirsty vengeance on the outside in his dedication to escape the castle, when in the comfort of his storm room, or his mind palace so to speak, he has to face up to something. Even if he escapes this challenge, even if he gets out and defeats the Veil, Clara is still dead.
And you'll still be gone. Whatever I do, you still won't be there.
So good. We've had tons of scenes of the Doctor crying, and God, this is the best one. Mainly because it shows that the performance doesn't have to mirror the intensity of the emotion. This quiet crying, the Doctor falling down, resting his hands on his face, showing the frustration and feeling the way that he does. It, yet again, is another example of Capaldi's terrific acting. Then, the Doctor gets his closure. Clara appears.
Doctor, you are not the only person who ever lost someone. It's the story of everybody. Get over it. Beat it. Break free. Doctor, it's time. Get up off your ass and win.
Clara appearing here obviously symbolizes the moment that you free yourself from the grief of a loss and decide it's time to move on, which is obviously way harder than it sounds. Because moving on is such a long process and requires a lot of strength and dedication, when you lose someone, it's very much like a chunk of your life is just gone. It takes a long time to fill that hole with something else, and can even feel like billions of years, like the Doctor had to go through. And the final reason that Heaven Sent is my favorite piece of cinema ever is that its themes applied very truthfully to me pretty recently. A friend of mine passed away 2 years ago to suicide, and the emotional fallout was devastating. Before I move on, I have to say that I, personally, have come to terms with his passing, even more so since the first time I made this video. But at the time, it was insanely hard. He was in a lot of my old videos along with my other friends. We talked and played games together almost every day. Our little four-man crew had hangouts every week for a whole year at one point. When the news broke, the devastation that was life for a while was truly intolerable at times. The ramifications of his passing had caused irreversible damage in our social circle, and for a long time it felt like things could never be the same again. During this time, the only place I found solace was in Doctor Who, and I binged Heaven Sent every day for weeks on end, touched by the intimacy of the story. Heaven Sent helped me find my closure and realize that the memory of him wouldn't always be a sad one, the way it is now, and has been for some time. To this day, I have never resonated with a piece of drama in the same way. Heaven Sent, and Doctor Who in general, is forever seared onto my heart. In the previous chapter, I focused primarily on the episodic quality of the show, choosing my 2 favorite episodes and talking about why they stand out to me based on their own quality, but it would be silly to not consider how Doctor Who handles the more serialized side of the program, the series' arcs, twist endings, and continuity shakeups in its run. Mostly in addition with the modern series, and yet another reason Classic is getting sidelined for this essay, Doctor Who with every season has some sort of mystery being unraveled, with seeds being planted for the diligent fans to pick up on. Or, if you're Series 5, explicitly panning on the cracks in time at the end of every episode so even the most oblivious person couldn't miss it. Usually the mystery is resolved by the series end in a giant world-ending series finale, where a main character almost always dies in one way or another. Or, if you're Series 10, where everybody dies. Not all series arcs are created equal, of course, but all are, in the end, at least in some facet, satisfying. Unless you're Series 6, where we have 2 episodes explaining everything at the midpoint of the series, dawdle around for the rest of the episodes, and then drop the ball when the finale comes. So I'll quickly cover all the series arcs in the show and give my opinion on both the arcs and the series overall, and then at the end of this chapter focus on my 2 favorite twists in Doctor Who. So, if you're not caught up yet, I'll give you a spoiler warning for what I'm going to talk about when we get there. And if you're sad that I'm not hardcore analyzing these series, trust me, you don't want it. I workshopped a 5,000 word version of this chapter where I did exactly that, and it ruined the pace of the entire essay. It was so torturously boring. This video may be long, but I'm not rambling about pointless stuff, it's structured. So I'm just gonna keep it moving here. Series 1, Doctor Who's first series. It's Eccleston's only series, so it's given a lot of weight because of that, and has some good episodes, but I think the show is still finding its modern footing. The Rose and Nine dynamic is suitably the heart of all the drama, which makes the series feel really intimate between these two characters, which is good. The Bad Wolf story arc is certainly serviceable and actually sets up the Deus Ex in the finale, which some series don't have the luxury of saying, and the Bad Wolf entity has so much payoff with how it emerges and effortlessly destroys the Daleks, which results in Nine's regeneration. In summary, a small and personal series that ends big and awesome, yet still rooted in its characters that we've seen flourish. I'll put it there. Series 2. Rough one for me. We have some gems of episodes here, but I gotta be honest, the 10 Rose stuff sinks this one for me a lot, like I've already mentioned. I enjoy Tennant as always, I got nothing against this series per se, but we have some weak episodes here, man. Some good ones too, let it not be forgotten, and the series arc is quite climactic too, and again is rooted in character, and in a weird timey-wimey way, actually resulted in payoff for Rose's character, which was fun for me to see. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday is a great finale. It ends Rose's story in a Rose ending for those that wanted that, so I guess this is just a series that isn't for me. Worth a watch, of course, but I'm throwing it there. Series 3. Huge improvement. I enjoy Martha quite a bit more as an independent companion, not that Rose wasn't. I think Martha is just more fun to watch and has a stronger character, like I've mentioned. Episodes are better across the board, the show looks better, feels better, and the serialization is better. But you know, more on that at the end. Love Series 3 a lot. This feels like a complete adventure in the Doctor Who saga, putting it there. Series 4. Another massive step up. Series 4 has Doctor Who's strongest elements, strongest episodes, strongest finale. I got no fear in saying that this is my favorite series in Doctor Who. She goes at the top, baby. The David Tennant specials. Love this, love these episodes. My first episode of Doctor Who, masterpiece, set up to a gem, and I don't even really count this one, but it's okay, I guess. It's going right there, I'm not moving it, there is no debate. Series 5, Moffat's first series of Doctor Who, and God, do I love this one. I think it's probably my most rewatched series of Doctor Who, and for good reason. Series 5 breathes new life into the franchise, the show has never looked better, Matt hits the ground running, all the characters have more depth than ever, episodes are fantastic, and the finale maintains that vision. So many strong and iconic elements, it defines the Moffat run. Number 2. Series 6. A series that gets a lot of hate, and I don't really share that sentiment. Series 6 was the peak of my Doctor Who obsessiveness. I had been watching the show for a good 2 years, and every episode in this series felt so exciting. All the characters were so comfortable and slipped into their roles like butter, and every element of them was just firing on all cylinders. The episodes in this run are very good, with a few really, really huge standouts that I revisit regularly. But the serialization is where most people take issue with this series, and yeah, contrivance wraps this one up, unfortunately. The elements are there, and they keep me watching, so it's a fun series. It's going there. Series 7A. Things are going downhill at this point for me. While 7A keeps the strong characters, the 5 episodes that occupied the 2012 Doctor Who run range from awful to superb. It's a mixed bag by definition, but rooted in the characters that I love with a tragic end that wraps up the threads that we were following. I still don't really hate this one, but she's going a bit lower. Series 7B. I'm starting to get angry. I think 7B is a series of Doctor Who that genuinely doesn't have an episode that I would want to revisit aside from Day of the Doctor and Time of the Doctor, and those don't even really count. I think Clara is wasted here, used only as a plot device most of the time. 11, as much as I love him and Matt Smith's performance, starts to feel a bit, how should I put this, out of character or maybe even overplayed sometimes, which feels kind of dumb to say, but I said it. I think it's still a great iteration of the Time Lord hero, but 7B's weak episodes, weak companion, wasted Doctor, and confused finale makes it my least favorite series. Sorry if you love this one, I know it has its fans. I've seen them. Series 8. Capaldi's first series. I think we're still climbing out of the ravine that 7B left us in, and Series 8, while an improvement to be sure, is a series that exists out of necessity. It's a stop on the wild ride of Capaldi's tenure that isn't my most favorite thing ever. Good things exist, obviously. Clara is miles better, and this dynamic, obviously, works more for me, as I've said. Capaldi is my favorite Doctor, and he gets some nice moments, but I think episodes are more weak than strong, and the finale isn't anything to get excited about, although Missy is without a doubt my favorite Master. So I think this spot fits nicely. Series 9. Capaldi skyrockets up to fantastic. I love this series a great deal more. With Clara at her best, Capaldi honing his Doctor more to align with my ideas. Stories are a mixed bag, I would say, but there's more good than bad, definitely. Heaven Sent is in this series, and the finale, at least I think, is intimate and moving. Series 9 is Capaldi having the time of his life, and I'm there for it, man. He goes up there. Series 10, the final stint of the Doctor Who series that, I'm including here. And it is, while not my favorite Capaldi series, very, very good. I think I enjoy the 12 and Clara dynamic a bit more than the 12 Bill and Nardole dynamic, and some of the episodes are less preferable to 9 for me, but Capaldi is at his absolute best as the Doctor. Some episodes are just stand out for the whole show, and the finale is what I believe to be Doctor Who's best. Capaldi goes out with a bang and puts a nice bow on his entire run of Doctor Who. And it, of course, goes right there for me. So, yep. That's all of them. Anyways, I'm going to talk about something that I really want to talk about. My 2 favorite twists in Doctor Who. These are twists that are imbued with the same bombasticity and delightful chaos that defines Doctor Who, and I honestly can't wait. The Fornox twist in the David Tennant specials is 100% Doctor Who's best twist, and one of the best in television as a whole. It occurs to me that there is a small portion of the community that actually doesn't like this scene, so, we're gonna have to have a debate. Never miss a chance to tell people that they're wrong. No. So this scene happens in The End of Time Part 2. David Tennant's last story, and this scene is the catalyst for his regeneration. Love this story, by the way. So, the Master's back from the dead because literally magic, and he's gonna kill the Doctor.
He will knock 4 times. That was a prophecy. Knock 4 times and then...
The 10th Doctor is convinced that the "he will knock 4 times" motif relates directly to the Master. The Master is gonna kill him because, honestly, how could it be anything else? Basically, to make a really long story really, really short, everyone on planet Earth becomes John Sim except for this guy, this girl, these cactus aliens, and this handsome pinstripe suit wearing gentleman. The Master is in control of the entire globe, so the Doctor has to hide off-world on a spaceship. The Time Lords are escaping the Time War and planning to destroy time itself. The Doctor's hand continues to get forced throughout the story. His better judgment to save the planet and the universe at large puts him directly in harm's way and risk of fulfilling this prophecy. He crashes into the scene, Wilf goes into this thing, and the Doctor stands valiantly against the Time Lords, wielding a weapon he had shunned moments ago, not backing down. He destroys the link, the Master saves the Doctor's life, and Tennant rises from the ground, absolutely content that he survived. Jeez, it's good. Goosebumps, man, every single time. These 2 characters are so strong, and in this one intensely moving scene, the cards are finally down. The Doctor has to make a truly difficult decision after thinking he narrowly avoided death. Will he save Wilf or save himself? And what a beautifully personal decision it is. We had all this commotion and chaos moments ago, and we thought this was where the Doctor was going to go down fighting.
But then, actually, once they're gone, which turned out to be the Time Lords and Timothy Dalton and the Master and everything, once they're gone, it would come down to a really simple, personal thing, which is just saving one man's life.
The choice is made before the scene even begins. The Doctor will step in that cage and sacrifice himself. I don't believe that there's a single person who's watched this scene and been on the edge of their seat thinking, oh my god, will the Doctor actually leave him? No, of course not. And that was never the intention. The beauty is how the character reacts, and it is a bravura performance from David Tennant that breaks my heart. We empathize with the Doctor's unyielding desire to live because, let's not forget, he thought he was going to die in this episode. No regeneration. He's been through a gauntlet of stress and loss, and his lack of agency in this moment results in an explosive rage. He breaks down and yells at Wilf, and obviously these are surface level insults. The Doctor doesn't mean them, and Wilf doesn't believe them. He's just releasing the tension, and for such a powerful decision in the show's canon, I don't think the moment would have had any staying value if Tennant just immediately climbed to his knees and stepped into the chamber without hesitation, which is apparently what some people would have preferred. Obviously, that's how the Doctor feels internally. There's no hesitation in his decision, he's not pondering any of it. Look behind his eyes, there is no choice to be made. His mind isn't racing. His fate is sealed. The Doctor is a hero, he cares for Wilf, he has no desire for self-preservation. Every component of the situation says that he's laying down his life for him. And the energy of the scene and how shocking and heartbreaking the twist was should have resulted in a more explosive reaction because the emotion has to be released. And that's exactly what the episode does. Holding on to this moment for just a little longer, savoring life before he has to let it all go. This is an entire run's worth of baggage and turmoil being released, and the extreme picturesque, captivating, and unforgettable moment that it is results in a scene that is a massive, glowing beacon of everything that Doctor Who is about. It's so much of what the show is, this heightened science fiction epic, talking about people and choices and morality. This is my favorite scene in Doctor Who, I'm not joking. And I hope my explanation may have swayed those of you on the side of the Doctor's temper tantrum to see a different viewpoint. And now that we've covered that more controversial twist, we can take a look at something a bit more mutually agreed to be an amazing twist. The Master's return in Series 3. Yeah, you probably saw this one coming, so let's get down to brass tacks. Throughout Series 3, this guy called Harold Saxon is name-checked all the time, and seems to express some interest in Martha and her family, and, specifically, the Doctor. All that we know about him is that he has some form of political power, but his identity is completely unknown. It's only at the end of Series 3 that the picture becomes clear. The Doctor and Martha are taken to the end of the universe and meet the friendly and humble Professor Yana, trying to save the human race beyond the collapse of reality itself through utopia. The Doctor and Professor Yana work together to launch the rocket, develop a bond, and it all gets dashed by the rocks when Yana, overwhelmed with the concept of Time Lords and time travel, pulls out this, a fob watch, or rather, something disguised as a fob watch. 3 episodes ago in Human Nature and the Family of Blood, we found out exactly what. The episode had been baiting us the whole time, there's actually something here. Who is he? What'll happen? How will the Doctor react? The episode builds and crescendos to an amazing and tense scene where Professor Yana flicks open the pocket watch as the rocket detonates, and in one slow turn, everything changes forever. Some stuff happens that I don't feel like explaining, and then the Master regenerates into John Sim. He appears completely confident just out of regeneration and playfully mocks the Doctor and his companions in danger, alludes to the fact that he does have a massive plan to be revealed, and then steals the TARDIS. What a cliffhanger. And in the next episode, we discover that Harold Saxon is the Master's human disguise, and that, through an array of satellites used to brainwash the human race, gets inducted as Prime Minister of Great Britain. So here, the audience finally realizes that the Master had been around all series long, trying to keep tabs on the Doctor as Harold Saxon, and that this moment had been coming all series long. And us Doctor Who fans are like sheep. We eat up all this nostalgia bait every single time, even though it always happens every single time the same way over and over, because what's always exciting about it is that it's new. How is this new Master going to be even more awesome than the last? Watching for the first time, you have no idea the amazing stuff that'll come in the next episode. And this new and menacing take on the Master, as a reveal to build up to all series long and bank all of the serialization on, is pretty flawless. All the performances are on point, and to go further from that, the story also explores how the Master and the Doctor are connected, with a tragic end to their story, even if it only was for a series and a half. And while these are my 2 favorite twist endings in Doctor Who's run, that's not to say that all the others are worthless, but you already knew that. You finished a Doctor Who episode and rapidly spammed left-click on the next episode button before. We've all been there. Doctor Who's premise and strong characters make for a great springboard to explore any number of things for the duration of a series, and the variation and style of each one really makes each series feel complete and engaging. After all, if there isn't anything actually compelling you to watch the next episode to find out what happens, what kind of TV show is that? Well, I guess you'd have Malcolm in the Middle, or Family Guy, or something, but those are episodic shows. Doctor Who prides itself in doing both, so it's great that most, or all of the time in Doctor Who's run, the serialization is in its favor. It's like Hitchcock said, drama is life, with the dull bits cut out. I can't think of anything that describes Doctor Who better. Life, but with the dull bits cut out. Art is something very important to me. I've been an artist my whole life, starting off playing guitar and piano as a little guy, and then moving towards visual arts in my middle school years. It didn't matter where I was on campus, the cafeteria, the soccer field, the bleachers, art class, math class, English class, the bus ride home. Everywhere I went, I always had a sketchbook and pencil tucked firmly under my arm. I doodled to the point of obsession, geeking out over YouTubers I loved, movies I loved, video games I loved, and of course, TV shows I loved. So many pages full of hastily etched fan art that was, of course, awful, but the obsession became passion, and as the years have gone on, my feelings toward the medium have been refined. Nowadays, I still specialize in visual arts as well as doing, all this, but really, the art of film truly has my heart. The beauty of film and cinematography blows me away. And a cinematographer that has an eye for gorgeous staging, lighting, creative shots, or inspired imagery like Rachel Talalay just fills me with inspiration. The secondhand love for the arts that all of the amazing directors behind Doctor Who give me inspires me to go off and make my own art, honestly. While I was at art school, I would literally watch Doctor Who episodes while painting to get inspiration. I am not remotely joking, it's true. Every time the canvas was in front of me, I had to pull out my phone and earbuds and open up Amazon Prime Video, which Doctor Who was on for free back then, or I literally couldn't get in the zone. In regards to the show's actual cinematic beauty, man, is there anything I can say that wouldn't be completely self-explanatory? Doctor Who is the most beautiful TV show I've ever seen in my life. And it all comes down to the show's complete understanding of the science behind color. The utility in a color palette, where the beauty in variety and stylization lies, and where the beauty in normal and unhindered visuals lies. The clash between
Great, the butchers.
Well, it might do you good.
are contrasts ingrained into the show that parallel to us as viewers, constantly being exposed to new sci-fi craziness in every episode coming from the understandable liveliness of Earth. You may be saying, yeah, obviously, but I bring it up because this feeling is evoked through the show's visuals and the show's visuals alone. It does the most grunt work out of any facet of the show. The absurd amount of creativity and inventiveness of these connoisseurs is criminally underappreciated in the film world. It is a murder of everyday's truth that Doctor Who cinematographers go unappreciated for a single second longer. For example, let's take a look at one of Doctor Who's most beautiful episodes, The God Complex. The visuals just jump out, made by the high-fidelity cameras gifted to the production in the form of Arri Alexa's XT+. Arri Alexa cameras have been used to shoot such beauties like Gravity, Blade Runner 2049, 1917, Parasite, Green Book, Birdman, and so many more. So it's no surprise that the image is very high quality, and it's kind of really awesome that Doctor Who, a BBC production, got such good cameras. Of course, the tools are one thing, and how the directors use them is another thing entirely. The lighting of the sets is housed by warm lamps that have both a certain quality of local brightness that casts the scenes in shadow occasionally, but also makes the scenes quite bright based on their sheer numbers. The yellow lights mounted to every wall, every countertop, every table bathes the scene in warm colors, but we don't have any lens flares or glare or harsh overlighting. The disciplined lighting is thoroughly impressive. On top of the careful lighting use, the costume designer's use of varied colors, in cohesion with the warm environment, makes the characters both identifiable at a glance and believable and realistic to the outfits. This isn't color vomit, and it isn't too much of one color. The hotel walls and floor are made of cream, yellow, brown, and red, primarily warm colors, and the wardrobe of the cast is made of either neutral or cool colors. Rita wearing blue hospital garbs, Gibbous in a baggy charcoal suit, or like a cardigan, I guess, Joe wearing a dark navy suit and a yellowish tie to complement it, Howie wearing a blue t-shirt and light gray hoodie, Rory wearing a, like a dark navy or maybe just black jacket and a button-up blue and green shirt, and Amy wearing a black leather jacket, denim short skirt, and a white blouse with a pink undershirt. Even the Doctor, who wears primarily warm colors, has a blue bow tie on for this episode. This is stellar because it gives us such a clear picture of the scene. This is the background, this is the foreground. This one is Howie, this is what he would wear, and the result is a kaleidoscope of realistic color that doesn't appear washed out or neutral. What a concept. This is a balance Doctor Who strikes quite often, An episode can be moody or dark, yet still be colorful and gray. Look at something like Day of the Moon. This is a dark scene, but there's still quite a range of color here, and is a far cry from a black scene. Doctor Who is a prime example of how you should shoot a scene. I mean that. I shill these visuals so much, they're so underrated. Here, just to have my own fun, take a look at my top 20 favorite shots in Modern Who. Enjoy.
Rest now, my warrior. Rest now, your hardship is
Every viewer who ever turned on Doctor Who has taken him into his heart. He belongs to all of us. I don't remember Doctor Who not being a part of my life. It became a part of growing up. It's in my DNA. Clearly, I would kill to have dinner with Peter Capaldi. Doctor Who, being a show that's older than most, if not all of the actors in it throughout its history gift those that step into the show nowadays something totally unique to the world of acting.
I'm very proud of everything we've done, and thank you all very, very much.
Most people in Britain have fond memories of watching Doctor Who in their youth, and that includes actors, and they approach the show and its characters very carefully. And if you're one of the very rare people in the whole of Britain that hadn't connected with the show, at the very least, the attention that Doctor Who would give your career can make or break it. So, in one grand statement, if you're an actor and get invited onto Doctor Who, you better make that the best performance of your career. For this reason, most of the performances in Doctor Who are very good, even for small roles, but it's especially noteworthy when approaching the performances of the main cast of the show throughout the years. Inhabiting the roles for months and years on end, the characters really do become larger than life. This gives the roles some artificial depth, to the point where, even in the episodes that don't really mesh with the characters as the actors understand them, the actors, given an innate sense of how their character would react and feel, elevate the writing to a considerable degree across the board. So much finesse is given, so much love and attention by everyone, and by no one more than the actors. And in some instances, Peter Capaldi, the performance literally changes my life and inspires me to love film again, because seriously, Peter is a perfect actor, and the fact that we got him in Doctor Who is a gift I hope the world never forgets.
I'm not on the phone, I'm right here. Standing in front of you. Please, just see me.
So, naturally, we're gonna zero in on my two favorite performances in the show and what makes them work, as has been the formula for the essay. Because everyone wants to sit here for 6 hours and hear me say, Billie Piper did a really good job. Freema really brought something new to the companion dynamic. Karen Gillan had so much life in her portrayal, so on and so forth. As for the two standout performances, they go to none other than my boys David Tennant and Peter Capaldi. First, let's be upfront. This role was a dream for both the actors we're focusing on. Both are lifelong Doctor Who fans, with Tennant going into the acting world solely with the dream of getting such a role. So when he finally got it, he wasn't going to slander that chance in any way. Tennant is a large part of why people love the RTD era of Doctor Who, and no, it's not because he's hot. At least I hope. Tennant's version of the Doctor is markedly more human than his predecessors. He responds to human emotions in a real way, he comforts people, reassures people.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am very, very sorry.
I am very, very sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I swear, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
It's not a quality that I subscribe to in the Doctor per se, but it's the man's take, and it's definitely not bad, just different. Because of the human writing, it's easy to be drawn to him as a leader and friend, someone to confide in and trust, and Tennant's performance certainly mirrors that. He's sweet, charming, funny, and intelligent, but takes the time to make sure people understand, which, some doctors don't even consider. Rattling off 1,000,000 words a minute without pacing oneself. Of course, a performance so one-note couldn't be this memorable, so there's an aura of mystery, intensity, rage, which is something that Eccleston forged and Tennant owned. His Doctor is more vicious, intense, unforgiving, and he even says as much in his first episode.
No second chances. I'm that sort of a man.
And the journey his Doctor goes on, losing people time and time again, and eventually dying alone, there's some sorrowness to his progression as the Doctor. Once a happy and joyous pair when in the company of Billie Piper's Rose, but now alone and hurt. But that's just a part of Time Lord existence. You lose everyone you love when one is immortal, and that melancholy is perfected nowhere else than in Tennant, and I find myself revisiting his Doctor to see that side once again. It's pretty hard to tell whether the credit should be given to the writing or the performance, but at the very least, almost nothing is lost in translation between the script and the screen. Tennant imbues the Doctor with such flair and life and energy, and the complete simpatico nature of these two and their concentrated depiction of the lead makes Russell's era of Doctor Who beloved by so many. It truly is the performance of a lifetime. And then Capaldi.
How many hearts will be broken? How many lives shattered? How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk!
Now, I've made it no secret in this video at this point that Peter Capaldi is my favorite Doctor, but he's actually also my favorite actor ever, and I've never seen him in anything else other than in Doctor Who, aside from James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which has since come out since the first video, and I was absolutely giddy in theaters seeing my boy Peter on the big screen in a superhero movie. And duh, his performance was fantastic, even if we didn't see a whole lot of him. Peter Capaldi's Doctor is the single focus of his tenure. His character gets a laser-focused progression from season to season, and his arc into one of the best Doctors ever is a sight to behold, and one of my most memorable experiences from watching a TV show. There's a brilliant video on YouTube called 26 Minutes of Peter Capaldi Acting or something, and it's a compilation of all his greatest hits in Doctor Who, and I'll be sure to link it below to get his arc in Doctor Who, essentially in fast forward, although if you want the whole thing, I gotta recommend subscribing to HBO Max, or buying a DVD set if you're like me and love physical media, to watch his tenure for yourself. Peter Capaldi was not just a childhood Doctor Who fan, but a lifelong Doctor Who fan, and it is unbearably poetic that the man finally got his role and stomped all of his predecessors as far as I'm concerned.
People always ask me, what is it about the show that appeals so broadly? The answer I would like to give, and which I'm discouraged from giving because it is not useful in the promotion of a brand, is that it's about death. And it has a very, very powerful death motif in it, which is that the central character dies. And I think that is one of its most potent mysteries, because somewhere in that, people see that that's what happens in life. You have loved ones, and then they go. But you must carry on.
Peter's arc is perfect. He starts unsure of who he is, as this is a brand new regeneration cycle for him. We get the sense that the Doctor knows what to do, but he doesn't know if that's him. He's confused on who he is, and if that wasn't bad enough, the one relationship that lingered through regenerations, that one being with Clara, is extremely fraught. We get that the Doctor is desperate to find himself, and be who he knows he has to be again. Series 8 ends with the Doctor learning his lesson, and learning to be himself. He loosens up and injects more personality and fun into himself. That is, until things get dark and reckless and Clara dies. The Doctor becomes furious with the Time Lords, who inadvertently caused Clara's death, which is obviously her fault, but the Doctor is foolish and blinded by rage. He destroys himself and breaks all his own rules, becoming the hybrid. And yes, I like Hellbent, and I'm tired of pretending that I don't. After he comes to terms with the loss, the Doctor has finally become the perfect medium. Not strict and serious, not too fun and reckless, but wise and responsible and kind and remarkable. Everything that I love in the Doctor, all building up in this incredible speech in his penultimate episode, verbalizing all the lessons the Doctor has learned about life and himself, solidifying Capaldi as my favorite Doctor in Doctor Who.
Winning? Is that what you think it's about? I'm not trying to win. I'm not doing this because I want to beat someone, or because I hate someone, or because I want to blame someone. It's not because it's fun. God knows it's not because it's easy. It's not even because it works, because it hardly ever does. I do what I do because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind. It's just that. Just kind. If I run away today, good people will die. If I stand and fight, some of them might live. Maybe not many, maybe not for long. Hey, you know, maybe there's no point in any of this at all, but it's the best I can do. So I'm going to do it, and I will stand here doing it till it kills me. You're going to die too. Someday. How would that be if you thought about it? What would you die for? Who I am. It's where I stand, where I stand. It's where I fall.
I don't think there's a single soundtrack out there that is as... how should I put this? Completely and utterly perfect as the Doctor Who soundtrack composed by Murray Gold. There has never been a day where I won't look at Gold's absolutely enviable work on Doctor Who and be completely awestruck. The songs in this show and the sheer amount of absolute classics in their own right is positively staggering. Taking huge inspiration from composers like Danny Elfman and having the luxury of the National Orchestra of Wales at his disposal, massive orchestral anthems, choirs, and beautiful, swelling medleys have become the staple of Doctor Who, and is inseparable from its identity. It's just a match made in heaven. Man, I go as far as to say that Murray Gold is the most important component of Doctor Who. It's fascinating to look at it in that regard, because he's been on the show the longest, from 2005 to 2017, the entire duration of the revival until Chris Chibnall's run.
Might be Doomsday, actually. I mean, in that there is a fan base, you know, that was the one that sort of made people's ears prick up. So, but I love I Am the Doctor for Matt as well. And Rose's theme and Gallifrey, you know, I do like those pieces. I would say that my choices would be pretty much consistent with what other people would choose as well. I mean, God, you know, the one with Catherine Jenkins, you know, I like that one. And Valet Decem, you know, that was fun. I'm fond of them.
And God, man, they just get me feeling a certain way. He's an absolute genius. How many tracks, man? How many iconic and orgasmic delicacies to our eardrums has Murray Gold gifted our petty human ears with? Whether it be the thundering and tectonic crescendo of the majestic tale, the swelling and tear-jerking build of the Shepherd's Boy, the booming choir of Valet Decem, a similarly great vocal performance in the long song, the irreplaceable iconicism of I Am the Doctor, the magical wind instruments of A Madman with a Box, the odd hums of the 10th Doctor's theme, the rich bass of A Good Man, the undisputed masterpiece, Wilf's Wiggle. His music is so grand and orchestraic, and it's so appropriate for a show like Doctor Who with tons of lore and build-up to transform the narrative into a sci-fi epic with iconic moments left and right, and with Murray Gould's masterful music to provide accompaniment to these moments, every scene is molded into the type that plasters a huge grin on your face every time you watch it. The music is so beloved, in fact, that there have been 3 performances of Doctor Who's music at the Proms, where fans all came together at the Royal Albert Hall in 2008, 2010, and 2013, and witnessed an unforgettable performance of Doctor Who's greatest medleys by the Albert Hall Orchestra. God, I wish I could have been there. It would have been the highlight of my life. Murray Gould's music is so close to my heart, and in case you didn't notice, has been scoring this entire video, and it was something that I absolutely had to include. It's so much of Doctor Who's identity, and to not include it would be a sin of the highest order. So many of them I believe to be some of the absolute best pieces of orchestral music ever composed, and are so underrated by the film industry. Nominated time and time again at the BAFTA Awards to never win, only winning once at the IFMCA in 2013. I mean, what a tragedy. Murray's notoriety should be unending, producing hundreds of original tracks in his 10-series stay on Doctor Who, straddling genres all the while. The man is a complete and utter genius, and a person that I wholeheartedly respect. Let's make it so his music is never ever forgotten by holding it in high esteem for years to come. Doctor Who fans are a passionate bunch, and the love that I see within the community for Gould's work certainly gives me high hopes. Here's my playlist. You can find it on Spotify if you're curious what my all-time favorites are. There are a lot of them. Finally, the Chibnall era. Let's do it right this time. For those unaware, the last time that I made this video, the penultimate chapter was exactly this, the Chibnall era. A chapter focused solely on Chris Chibnall, the new showrunner's take on Doctor Who, and why I thought it was a butchering of everything fundamentally remarkable about Doctor Who. However, the first essay's take on the Chibnall era is one of the best living examples of audience entitlement I've ever seen, let alone participated in my life. Simply because I was a hardcore Doctor Who fan, I decided to exempt myself from the fundamental rules of critique and instead opted for cynicism and weak banter to depict the Chibnall era in a video that, up until that point, had been very well structured. I suspect this chapter sank the video for a handful of people, and I don't blame them for feeling that way. Make no mistake, I do hate the Chibnall era, and my hatred remains as fierce as it was back then, but this time around I hope to amend that heresy and provide an index of points that I believe to be damning of Chibnall's failure, as well as entertaining. I have obviously actually watched the episodes this time and taken an index of detailed notes on Flux when we get to it, which I've publicly released as review videos, as you all may or may not know. I did my research, and funnily enough, my feelings haven't changed since last year. The difference this time? Well, some actual criticism, aside from, "Chris, buddy, where is the consistency here?" Yeah, a mountain of preamble, but this is a long chapter, man. Let's finally get into it. My relationship with the Chibnall era of Doctor Who has been quite the tale. It all started before I was in the loop of online discourse back in 2017, when Jodie Whittaker was revealed as the 13th Doctor. I think back then I might have been skeptical because I was a kid and an idiot, on top of seeing the Doctor as a masculine character and, of course, my hero. So I think I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to connect with 13 in the ways I had the others, but there was no doubting Jodie's capabilities, I have to be clear. I thought Jodie would have killed it, which she did. I may make some derogatory jokes moving forward, addressing Jodie as a person in criticism as opposed to the Doctor, the character that she plays, but it's just because she's a funny person. She seems like an endless joy to be around, and I blame literally not a single iota of the Chibnall run on her. I mean, did you hear how many jokes I made about how hot David Tennant was? And that man is one of the best working actors alive today. Just know that my hatred of the 13th Doctor is very much attached to the character, less than the amazing actress playing her, and that includes the baseless claims of sexism. It's a gulf we need to get past, I understand, but I just had to preface that. I intend to attach genuine criticism to this portion of the video, not, it's a woman, therefore it is bad. I genuinely love Jodie Whittaker as an actress, and when she gets the right script, her acting chops are very clearly present. Anyways, I had fallen out of watching the show years prior because I was a stupid kid and my attention had waned to other things for some reason, but I hopped back on in 2017 with Series 10. I watched the episodes as they aired after school, having dropped off after Matt Smith's regeneration, and very eager to catch up on Capaldi's Doctor. I did so and my love of Doctor Who was rekindled, and with brand new Doctor Who on the horizon once again, life was good. Completely oblivious to how people were understandably nervous about Chibnall's helming of the show, I tuned into the premiere episode when it came out, promptly decided that this wasn't the show that I had loved, and never looked back. It was at this point that I got into the public discourse, saw the reception, and forever decided that Chibnall's era was a nightmarish heresy and bastardization of Doctor Who, and I would just wait in silence for the show to return to its former glory, or just accept that the show had died then and there. And that is very much reflected in my first essay's take on the Chibnall era. However, I've since determined that it's important to form your own opinions on things, especially if you're a film geek like me, so that's what I've done. Formed my own opinion on Series 11, 12, and 13 of my favorite TV show of all time. Let's get down to brass tacks, as you guys probably know what's coming next. It's worth mentioning right out the gates that you should absolutely watch these series right now and form your own opinions on these sorts of things, as bright spots exist in the show as they always do, and you should absolutely find them on your own. Never do what I did and become a mouthpiece for someone else's opinions. What I'm about to say may sound similar in some ways to what I said last time around, but the difference is I came to the conclusion myself. Let's get started. I suppose in going about critiquing these three series, I can parallel the order in which I covered the rest of the show in this essay, starting with the premise, naturally. Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who shares a lot of similarities to the Doctor Who that I know. There's a character called the Doctor, she's an alien, she has human friends, her ship looks like a blue box, she wields a buzzy toy, and fights bad guys. You've probably heard this criticism before, but I'm gonna repeat it here. Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who is a dumbed down version of the show that I just spent the last 2 hours praising. Chris Chibnall, a person who has written very good things and is also an enormous Doctor Who fan, has created an era of Doctor Who that is nothing familiar to me. This sort of change happens frequently, and it's typical for the fanboys to get up in arms about whatever new tone the show is taking and complain about it, which is hilarious. Nowadays, I consider myself to be pretty level-headed when it comes to this change, and it's plain as day to see that something larger is wrong here in the Chibnall era. And that's precisely what I would like to explore today. What elements of the Chibnall era make it such a boring and surface-level experience? How is every piece of the Chibnall era puzzle arranged in a way that creates an experience as forgettable as it is detrimental to Doctor Who's grander mythos? For me, the Chibnall era is one of the most disappointing experiences I've ever had in my life, and the sacred grounds that Chibnall haphazardly steps over to make way for his bold new plot makes for a roller coaster of an experience, with the bottom line being that I believe it to be painfully sloppy and horribly misguided. The show takes Doctor Who's terrific premise and frequently wastes it within its plotting, has awful and underdeveloped characters included for no reason other than to be supporting characters, weak and uninspired sci-fi concepts that are simply derivative of the good ideas past showrunners have had, cinematography that is utilitarian and consistent to the visual language of Broadchurch, which I don't need to tell you doesn't work with the accomplished color of Doctor Who's past, acting that is Genuinely as good as it could possibly be with the material provided. Music that, while well composed and has iconic themes for all the characters, ditches the orchestra and grandiose bombasticity that Murray Gold defined as uniquely Doctor Who for odd hums and ambient chords, which feels uniquely unlike Doctor Who. Almost every element in its production is a downgrade, with a few special little Dickens being particularly awful elements, and themes that are non-existent, confused, and/or misleading that speaks length about how to not write a Doctor Who series. Right now, we're going to be exploring all of this, so grab another soda, I guess, get some more popcorn, because I'm going to talk about why I don't like this era now. Let's do it. It's a real sea of mess, this whole era. We're going to go through every single bullet point, as I've said, but first up on the chopping block is the Chibnall era's biggest problem, the writing. This whole issue just begins and ends with the fact that Chris Chibnall is the showrunner and believes that Doctor Who is a show for kids and only for kids, which I don't need to tell you isn't really the case. This is an idea he has followed in his entire run of the show so far. Characters don't feel like characters, which is a massive deal. The actors try their best, but it's impossible to gain a picture of a character like Ryan or Yaz because they're pretty much a different person in every scene. The concept of characterization is a practice that was exempt from all of the brainstorming sessions, galvanized in, personally, my biggest and never-ending problem with the Chibnall era, the Doctor. I'm so sad that I even have to say this. There should have been at least 10 NASA scientists employed to read over every Doctor line Chris wrote to make sure it was worthy of being inserted to the canon of this centuries-old character. The lack of subtlety is unfounded. God, where to begin? There isn't a single thing about the 13th Doctor that works aside from the occasional well-written remark in a sea of contradiction. And I think it's all condensed into this one exchange in the Ghost Monument where the Doctor attempts to justify her pacifistic tendencies to Ryan, a newcomer to the TARDIS. The legendary Jay Etsky has already covered this in an unrivaled critique of the Chibnall era, and I would be surprised if I didn't mention that titan of a video essay at least once more in this section. But it's important to note that this is the moment that destroyed my impressions of the Chibnall era beyond repair back in 2018. This infuriated me beyond words. The Doctor's moral code is one of the most well-written character dynamics in the history of the medium, and the unforgivable stain on Doctor Who that is every line of Chibnall's canon destroyed everything I thought I loved about this incredible piece of the Doctor's immense character. It would be impossible to relay my qualms with this scene without, in some way, repeating what Jay said in his critique, but let's begin already. The Ghost Monument is the second episode of Series 11, and features our character's first journey to an alien planet, and a rollicking adventure to find the TARDIS and get home. The episode fails in theming, characters, dialogue, stakes, subtlety, creativity, and everything in between, along with completely misunderstanding the Doctor's anti-gun principle in this scene, where the Doctor and company are antagonized by some sniper bots with guns, forcing them to hide in this little cul-de-sac hidey hole thing under this ruined temple. Ryan, a companion of the Doctor's, picks up a rifle from the ground, hell-bent on using it in self-defense. The Doctor is firmly against it for reasons that the show doesn't understand, and the scene plays out. Ryan goes against the Doctor's wishes and runs out to engage the drones. He shoots them and they go down for a bit before standing back up, resulting in Ryan doing haha funny run back to cover bit where the Doctor finally affirms her viewpoint. Great scene, right? The character gets to express himself in a dire situation, the characters clash, and we affirm the correct line of reasoning. Morality secured. No, this scene is the antithesis of that, understanding that the Doctor doesn't use guns, but not really understanding why, which is reinforced in the dialogue.
No, guns, never use them.
Okay. Why, though? We don't get an answer. We don't actually get a moment where the show says guns are a part of a vicious cycle of violence. We don't actually get a we have to be better than them moment. We don't get a I never would moment. We don't get a coward any day moment. We get guns, never use them. Why? Please, for the love of God, explain to me. So this line is a problem, but the scene's themes are even worse. Ryan runs out and uses the gun on the enemies and it doesn't work, and then following it, the Doctor says,
"Now do you see why I don't like guns?"
And immediately we have some problems. What, so you don't like guns because they don't work? What? Who wrote this? This is a fundamental flaw in the script. This makes literally no sense and should have never made it to the final draft. The Doctor doesn't avoid guns because they don't actually work. The Doctor doesn't use guns because he is a morally virtuous character. It is a conscious decision the character makes because he chooses to be better than his enemies and conduct himself peacefully. And this is the kicker, everyone take note of this and put it on a motivational Instagram post or something. The Doctor doesn't go into conflict seeking to defeat the bad guy, but to resolve the conflict in the most peaceful way possible. He doesn't run into danger armed because he has no desire to harm anyone, but instead to help everyone. And this line, now do you see why I don't like guns, isn't even remotely close to correct. It's embarrassing and only gets worse in the finale, where the Doctor justifies her nonsensical stance on any particular issue the plot presents her with being just,
well, I'm inconsistent.
This is the philosophy behind everything the Doctor does in Chibnall's run. Not principle, not morality, not justice or honor or valor or even kindness, just...
well, I'm inconsistent.
The Doctor's a character that sometimes doesn't do what she means, so let's just do it every time and then call it a character, let alone the headlining character in the most beloved science fiction show in the entire world. This never goes away, literally ever. It's a problem in Series 11, it's a problem in Series 12, and yes, it's a problem in Doctor Who Flux, which we'll get to. This moment in Kerblam, this moment in Arachnids in the UK, in the Battle of Rafskurav Kolos, in Demons of the Punjab, in Spyfall, Orphan 55, Fugitive of the Jadoon, Ascension of the Cybermen, The Timeless Child, and many more. The Doctor is characterized as someone completely different in every single scene. The fundamental rule of consistency is not only completely lost on the Doctor in this era, but mutilated beyond repair. The inconsistency is never not an issue, on top of all of the other problems in this incarnation. The complete lack of subtlety, loosey-goosey rules on murder, random angry outbursts that come from nowhere, terrible pop culture references, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the Doctor's depth, selflessness, abnormality, expressivity, vulnerability, hospitality, bravery, heroism, kindness, forgiveness, and about a million other character traits of the Doctor's that were messily parodied in the 13th Doctor make for the most insanely confusing iteration of the Doctor yet. You know, aside from, oh, you know, the Doctor's quite abnormal, right? Let's just do a funny, I'm an alien and oblivious to human social cues here. That'll be great! So if you like that, 13's for you. As for me, I go for actual characters. In the same exact vein as the Doctor, companions and recurring characters in Chibnall's Who do not exist. Jodie Whittaker clearly took a belated trip to Home Depot because not a single character exists within the void of words leaving the portal mounted to these actors' faces. Remember back when I was talking about how Doctor Who's characters are actually good? Man, good times. Yeah, back literally an hour and a half ago, I said that in writing a character, it all begins and ends with consistency. Your job as a writer is to make the character believable, and in every single line, after some intense reverse engineering, it can be understood as to why the character said it. A character's entire past, present, and intricate detail of their entire life is pertinent to their every word. So how do you think Chris Chibnall fares? Yeah, no. There isn't anything to be said because there are no characters. These are rocks or planks of wood or whatever witty remark you want to make, following Jodie around, mostly delegated to moving the plot forward or doing funny, I'm a human and don't understand that. That may sound unfair because if you've watched the show, these characters seem to be kinda okay, you know? They sometimes butt heads with the Doctor and have some fun banter sometimes. What's the deal? Well, a disciplined eye reveals all, and attempting to index character traits for someone like Ryan or Graham as the series goes on, you'll find yourself crossing out and erasing character traits as you go. In Series 11 and 12, we have 3 main companions throughout its run. We'll cover everything within the proverbial Series 13 later, but for the other 2 seasons, these are the characters that we get. Let's start with Ryan. Ryan is, in my opinion, the weakest character of Series 11. I think he improves both in performance and depiction to eventually usurp Yaz in Series 12, but in 11, I think he's the worst in a landslide. In terms of function, Ryan is the young, spunky one in Chibnall's mind. He's unpredictable and athletic, as well as short-sighted and uninvested. He has a complicated history with his parents, something from his past that haunts him through most of the episodes, and he also suffers from dyspraxia, a coordination disorder which prevents him from doing some motor tasks. So this is a pretty nice list of character traits. This could really work. So tell me, you're asking, what's Ryan's actual personality like? Is he self-centered? Is he aggressive? Is he introspective or sarcastic or afraid or entirely self-confident? What are his hopes and dreams, his fears and insecurities? Who is Ryan other than a list of character traits? I don't know. Here's the thing. This is a really cute index of traits, it really is. But where everything is lost is in the actual show, the actual character of Ryan. Is he self-centered? Is he confident? Is he introspective? Yes, he's all of those things, and so are all the other characters in Chibnall's Who, which is infeasible because some of those traits are literally complete opposites of each other. This is precisely the problem, and it's the same for all the other characters as well. Graham is characterized as an older gentleman who longs for a good relationship with his grandson, Ryan, who more or less loathes him because he doesn't support his relationship with his grandmother, Grace. When Grace, unfortunately, dies by the end of the first episode, their relationship is on the rocks, and the further intrusion of the Doctor into their lives causes them to connect and bond over the series, and by Revolution of the Daleks, Ryan and Graham have an established connection and care for each other, enough for them to leave together when Ryan decides TARDIS life isn't what he wants anymore. Again, a really nice journey, on paper. Graham is just as inconsistent and temperamental of a character as Ryan is, despite Bradley Walsh's standout performance. We'll make Graham a bloodthirsty, vengeful samurai in one episode because the plot demanded it, and then in this episode he'll be a peaceful and wise grandpa. Despite Graham being a bit older than the two other companions and having a lot of life experience, he asks just as many questions as his younger compatriots and rarely has moments where his character shines. He's just a dot in the footage most of the time. Same for Yaz. Let's establish that she's a talented young police officer that is entirely confident in stressful moments. And then in all of the episodes afterwards, let's make her the typical scared, weak companion. Here, Yaz will say something that she would literally never ever say just to speak directly to the audience about how important Nikola Tesla was. Let's give Ryan a YouTube channel in the first scene of the first episode, and then never bring it up again so the audience is constantly wondering why that scene was in the script in the first place. These are the characters we get for this run. They are not characters. You could swap who says which line in the scene around and around, and it wouldn't make an iota of a difference to the plot, which I think is the biggest tell of weak characters out of them all. I mean, imagine if in Journey's End we accidentally swapped Donna and Rose's lines in the script. That would change quite a lot. But for the entirety of both Series 11 and 12, they just say stuff like this.
And how do you feel about that?
Are you joking? How's your house out there?
How do we do that?
How old were you?
So what's going on then? He's not really old. How's he eating all that stuff?
As you can probably tell, this is not an audience identification figure. This is a narrator.
It just sort of ignored you there, Doc. Got that, thanks, Graham.
And we have 3 of them. The stories in Chibnall's run range from an ill-structured attempt at recapturing the magic of Planet of the Spiders, this one that's the worst Doctor Who episode ever made, probably, an episode that has some of the most unbearably awful writing ever. Here's a little taste.
Alright, Monday, do your worst.
God, I can't believe they made Joe Martin say that. And the time, I can't exactly focus on my 2 favorites because, spoilers, I don't have 2 favorites. So I guess I'll pick the one episode in Chibnall's run I genuinely believe to be good, and an episode with a lot of potential that was squandered for no good reason. The Haunting of Villa Diodati, and It Takes You Away. Let's save the best for last, shall we? It Takes You Away is the 9th episode of Series 11 and features one of the best Doctor Who science fiction concepts ever. Here's a brief rundown. In a house in Norway, the TARDIS crew stumble upon an abandoned girl. She says that her father has left her with no explanation, and it's up to our heroes to solve the case. We find out later that inside one of the mirrors in this house is an alternate dimension, where the dead people of your life appear as they were before they died. The girl's dad is living here because he misses his wife and wants to stay with her for as long as possible. Following that, we see Grace, who appears before Graham, and Bradley Walsh delivers one of the most moving lines in the entire show.
Don't do this to me.
All of us have lost someone in some way or another, and for me, speaking as someone who lost one of his closest friends in the time between falling asleep on August 19th, 2019 and waking up on August 20th, 2019, only to be met with the worst phone call I'll ever get in my life, I would give anything to see him again. And as it turns out, the dead people aren't real, and it's up to our characters to be the bigger people and move on. Oh my god, is that not an awesome idea to explore for an episode? That's like Heaven Sent 2 or something. But the problem is that this is as far as this goes. It only gets as far as a concept, a pitch to the audience. If this idea was the whole episode, this genuinely could have been superb. But it isn't. We have a B-plot in this episode following the anti-zone or whatever with ribbon aliens and deadly moths and Ryan babysitting Hannah. It just butchers all of the potential it had. I don't understand how you can make an episode where you enter a dream world to live with loved ones who are now dead and make literally zero of it moving. The dialogue here doesn't even try, it goes no distance at all. Nothing of the character's sadness is explored, nothing of the subtext of it and the depth of it. It was just an idea for this episode. This should have been the whole thing, it should have gone a lot deeper and had a lot better dialogue. This episode disappointed me so much. And we finally get to talk about the best Chibnall episode in a landslide, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. This is a genuinely good episode, particularly because it's not written by Chris Chibnall. It is written by the amazing Maxine Alderton, who would later return in Doctor Who Flux to co-write Village of the Angels, a fan favorite by the looks of it. This is the one episode Chibnall didn't get his grubby hands on, and it shows. The episode is set in Villa Diodati with an ensemble cast of all sorts of fun and unique characters. I think I genuinely liked every single one of them. My favorite, to nobody's surprise, being Lord Byron. He's so good.
She licked it. She is the most baffling creature I've ever been acquainted with.
Human. Protein.
The Doctor is better, companions are genuinely well characterized, and the episode played with some fantastic science fiction ideas. This is also the episode that introduces Ashad, the main antagonist of the finale aside from the Master. I think he's really great in this episode. There's not much I can say, other than it was very well written and a lot of fun. If you want to watch any Chibnall episode, this is the one you'll get the most from. It's genuinely such a far cry from the rest of the lineup. When placed up against the other series of Doctor Who, I think this is probably like Gridlock levels of good. Not remarkable, but more good than bad. A noble effort to be sure, and Maxine's ability to stay her hand and focus on the characters, Doctor Who's strongest element, resulted in a fantastic episode. This has yet to be usurped by any Chibnall story, including Flux. Yeah, you heard me, Village of the Angels lovers. But that's it for Series 11 and 12. The Haunting of Villa Diodati is the only good episode. That is so sad. The rest are, unfortunately, all dumb and wrapped up by contrivance. They all have painful lines, misplaced themes, dissuasion from pathos for whatever reason, complete lack of subtlety, a constant need to explain everything, and on top of all that, most of them do absolutely nothing. They're pretty easy to forget, and it might do you quite a bit of good to do so. God, as this chapter goes on, I just get more and more depressed. Let's talk about the Chris Chibnall series and throw them on the Doctor Who series list. Yeah. Series 11. The weakest Chris Chibnall series in my opinion. It doesn't make for a great first impression, and even though massive problems exist in the following Chibnall series, with most of it a fault of their own, I feel like Chibnall was just playing catch-up ever since this series. Series 11 is a complete bore fest. Characters are at an all-time low, episodes are dumb, the serialization is non-existent, the Doctor is insufferable, and doesn't factor in any way with the rest of the show. It's just its own condensed, awful series. Series 11 is, in my opinion, probably Doctor Who's worst series, classic included. It's surely New Who's worst. Series 12. Slight improvement, I suppose. The lows are still as low as they were in Series 11, just happen less frequently. Characters feel more useful to the stories and are naturally fitting into their niches, despite Chibnall fighting tooth and nail for the opposite, and it helps the stories quite a bit. In general, I think Series 12 feels like it has a clearer vision than 11, and there are a slew of small factors that make that feeling feel that way. I imagine seeing old villains contributes to that, old characters, mysteries, which I'll get into in a second, and the new characters feeling more familiar. But that's pretty much as far as it gets, only a feeling. A sense that things have changed without that really being the case. Everything is still just as dumb. Characters are inconsistent, plot points are illogical, villains make no sense, Jack's lines are so bad, and the whole thing just kinda coasts along on a floaty trolley the entire time. It isn't a fun experience, except for the haunting of Villa Diodati. Also, Series 12 is the first Chibnall story with an overarching narrative, some serialization. I guess Series 11 was the Zem Shah story, but only 3 episodes in Series 11 alluded to him, unless you count Grace. Episode 1, 2, and 10. Those are the only ones. In Series 12, the story plays out in episodes 1, 2, 5, 8, 9, and 10. Realistically, every episode should have at least some sort of thread, but I won't complain. And I won't beat around the bush, this is some of the absolute worst serialization I've ever seen, and is so unbearably cliche, I can't believe Chibnall was even able to write these words without suffering a full-blown laugh attack with how fundamentally unengaging it is. So throughout Series 12, we continually hear,
"Everything that you think you know is a lie."
This does not keep me watching. At all. This is a mystery box, even more so for usual Doctor Who. This super duper important MacGuffin in the plot compelling the characters to find the answers, but nothing for me to be rooted into aside from Chris Chibnall writing into his stories. Oh yeah, by the way, I turned the Doctor into Space Jesus in the 10th episode. You're probably gonna want to stick around for that. So that's basically our serialization for Series 12. Chris Chibnall saying, there is a mystery. It's a joke. There is no mystery in saying that there is, in fact, a mystery. An episode ends on a cliffhanger and it feels cool and whatever, but I feel no desire to watch the next episode because I know that literally everything can be resolved by stupid nonsense. The cliffhangers in the old series weren't anything special, but there was some actual mystery and pathos fueling my desire to click next episode. None of that is here. It's pretty much all stupid fun and has no depth. And here we are. 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 7 seconds into this video, and we finally talk about it. Series 12 is an improvement from Series 11 in the smallest possible way measurable, but this new line of lore written by my friend and hero Chris Chibnall single-handedly ruined it. This is the dumbest thing yet written by man. It is everything that Doctor Who has been avoiding doing for decades, and not a single person put their foot down and stopped Chris from desecrating this sacred canon. A testament to his entire run of the show, I present to you, the Timeless Child. The Doctor is now the Timeless Child. The Doctor is ground zero for regeneration, she is the origin of the ability. Not only is she as a character fundamentally important to the Time Lord story now, something that wasn't really the case for the past 50 years, aside from the aborted Cartmel master plan, she isn't even biologically a Time Lord. And exempt from all of that ludicrosity, aside from the fact that the fugitive Doctor's TARDIS looks like a police box despite being allegedly pre-Hartnell, aside from the fact that she has no idea what a sonic screwdriver is, making her placement in the timeline of Doctors even more confusing, aside from the fact that it completely breaks the Valeyard as a character, River Song as a character, and the function of the Time Vortex, aside from the fact that it breaks the canon of episodes like Time of the Doctor, Night of the Doctor, Name of the Doctor, Hellbent, Listen, The Three Doctors, The Five Doctors, The Brain of Morbius, and retconning the 50th anniversary special twice, despite contradicting the knowledge of the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Silence, Testimony, the Great Intelligence, the Atraxia, the Tesselecta, and most tragically, the intelligence of the Doctor herself. We have to remember that all of this canon was messily stirred up just to have a mystery for Series 12. It doesn't change anything, which I think is the worst part of all of this. It doesn't matter. Who cares if the Doctor is the Timeless Child, says Chris. This'll be fun. Are you kidding me? Everyone cares, man. God. General consensus from what I could see about what people are saying, the only good thing about Chris Chibnall's Who is that the visuals are improved. And I immediately go, you have to be joking. Because it's a tense issue. Do you define good as stylized and realistic, or, you know, what I define as good? One look at it and you go, okay, yeah, this looks absolutely nothing like Doctor Who, and it's not out of the production's hands, you know? People need to realize that the surreal, colorful sci-fi-ness of past seasons was absolutely intentional. A careful team of hands went into crafting those sets and capturing those colors, and their work paid off. Doctor Who has the most accomplished aesthetic I've ever seen in my life, aside from, like, Into the Spider-Verse. The show can afford to be artsy and creative as well as just being beautifully shot in its own right. In Chris Chibnall cinematography, we ditch all the spectrum of colors and usually just settle on gray or yellow, tint the entire show in black, and backlight every scene to the point of nauseam. We still have some iconic shots that I love, my favorite probably being this one from Revolution of the Daleks. I'm not sure why the characters did this aside from getting the shot, but it's a nice shot. But this isn't all the past two eras of Modern Who were. It wasn't just, shot reverse shots and occasionally we got some cool stuff. All of it was gorgeous. Here are some normal shots from Time of the Doctor, and look at the difference. Looking back at Chibnall cinematography, I can't believe people think this looks good. I'm not a fan of the muddy colors, I'm just not. I'm sorry, I hate it, truly. This is the very antithesis of all that Doctor Who is about. We have so little color, but in the same vein, we also have scenes with too much color, most egregiously, the TARDIS. The dramatic lighting and bright orange and blue do not complement well in my opinion. The aesthetic is interesting and unique, but the TARDIS, a home base, a safe haven, a warm place to be, appears way too dark and way too inhospitable for me to think that it's a good design. Looking back at some of my favorite TARDISes, they feel like a home and feel like they belong to their respective doctor. But in this one, dude, where do I even sit? On these metal hexagons? What about some chairs, some fill lighting? Let me actually see the scene. On top of that, the jagged pillars that frame the console break up the environment, so at some angles, the TARDIS feels cluttered and claustrophobic, and other times, it's barren and open. I would not want to just hang out in this TARDIS, opposed to the fun and wacky 11th Doctor's TARDIS, or the expansive and homey 12th Doctor's TARDIS. I would kill to spend a week in either of them. If I was a companion, I would only want to stay aboard 13's TARDIS for as long as it takes us to get to the next adventure, which the characters seem to match, so I don't know, maybe they agree with me. Performances are good, one-offs are played well, as always, and the characters that do return get more opportunities to let their acting chops shine later on, but even right out the gates, performances are fine. Except for Sacha Dhawan. I'm sorry. Even though I love his energy and he seems like a delightful man, I think he severely overplays the Master. The size of the role got to his head, I'm sure, and all this is compensation for a performance he believes needs to be theatrical. His charisma is infectious and his confidence is apparent, but I think lines are occasionally too over the top with this Master, and the childish mannerisms are repeated a bit too much for my liking. I was on the fence about this performance for a while. I thought maybe it was good and I wasn't seeing it in the right light, but after some thinking, this is the one I'm singling out. He's a splendid actor, and I don't really believe his performance to be unwatchable, but rather critically misguided. Michelle Gomez still proudly holds the crown for Best Master for me, but that's alright. Across the board, performances are not what we should be talking about. These are totally okay. And then we get to the music composed by Sigyn Akinola, and this just isn't fair, man. I have to open this by saying this is a fierce competition. Both of these composers are fantastic and have such a clear vision for their tracks. I have nothing against Sigyn. I think his Doctor Who title theme is really unique and his character themes are memorable. I like 13's theme, I like the Spy Master's theme, I find his meditative and serene approach really moving when it works. But he's up against Murray Gold. There's no contest, everything he makes is doomed to feel like a downgrade. While the standout tracks do stand out, most of the music just kinda meshes together with little variation from the formula, and while Sigyn puts his little spin on it to make it at least feel new, Gold's music just fit like a glove. Every track had character, and that is what I remember the most about Gold's work. I mean, just think of all of the songs he gifted us within his tenure. I know I literally just talked about it a chapter ago, but a day shouldn't go by where we forget or take that for granted. Murray Gold completely spoiled me with his masterful composition of the Doctor Who soundtrack. So much so that Sigyn will just always be in his shadow, which is horrible, but true, at least in my opinion. Sigyn's music isn't bad at all, But for me, the character of the music is what I value, which is Sagin's Achilles heel, unfortunately. This is the one I would recommend you watch and form your own opinion on. After taking a closer look at his Spotify tracks, I have found some diamonds in the rough, but for me, I'd take gold back in a heartbeat. Doctor Who Flux is the most recent series of Doctor Who. The final episode aired 20 days ago, and its premiere episode aired on Halloween night. It was a 6-episode run that was heavily serialized with its own unique characters, threats, and ideas. This was Chibnall's magnum opus, his final official series of Doctor Who, unless you count the coming Jodie Whittaker specials as their own series, which I am doing and have done for something like the David Tennant specials. This was the first time I had tuned into new Doctor Who with the entire rest of the world in a long time, since Twice Upon a Time. I follow several Doctor Who pages on Instagram, I watch my own Doctor Who reviewers on YouTube, so I rode the hype with everyone else. Halloween night came, and I decided this was something I had to get in on, for the sake of Russell at least. So what's the takeaway, you're asking? Was Doctor Who Flux the Jodie Whittaker series Doctor Who fans have been waiting for? Was it a phoenix up for Doctor Who? Did it revive my favorite TV show of all time to pave the way for the future? Or was it just more of the same? A heartbreaking disappointment. Well, Doctor Who Flux is a complicated series. There's a reason those review videos are an hour long. There's a lot of stuff in these episodes. So I'm gonna treat you to a rundown of the plot of Doctor Who Flux, not from the order of the episodes, but chronologically in the events that happen. Get ready for a hearty couple paragraphs. Revolving heavily around the timeless child reveals of the past series, the Doctor tries to unearth the secrets of her past lives, something that she knows is connected to the mysterious Division from Fugitive of the Judoon. Division, an organization of rogue Time Lords, inducted the Doctor and Tech Tayun, the scientist who extracted regeneration from the Doctor as a child, into its ranks. Escaping the Division labs to eventually end up... Okay, I've never understood, is this supposed to be Earth or Gallifrey? It's gotta be Earth, right? There's no way this is Gallifrey. Anyways, the Doctor pulls a Superman and gets raised by a human couple until Division operators wipe his memory. It's around here that the Fugitive Doctor happens, I think. All this stuff with the chameleon arch makes no sense because the Doctor looks like this and also like this at the same time, which is impossible. Anyways, history passes and the story that we know begins in an unearthly child. Don't ask because an answer doesn't exist. Many years later, with the 13th Doctor now knowing the truth and attempting to uncover the secrets of her past with Division, the surviving operatives of Division attempt to cover their tracks by creating the Flux to destroy the end space, or the universe. The one that we've been following for the past 58 years, unless you consider the events of the Big Bang a discrepancy. I guess it would be because Amy's parents never got eaten by the Crack in this universe, but it still applies. The Flux begins tearing away at the universe, with Division, utilizing conversion plates, I think, planning to live outside of the universe forever. In order to stop the Doctor from defeating the Flux, inevitably, Division calls Weeping Angel operatives to action in order to transport her to Division headquarters, where she'll be imprisoned with no means to save the universe from the Flux. Except she can just remove the conversion plate and gets plopped right next to her TARD. With the Flux now heading for the Earth, the Lupari, a race of dog people assigned to their own specific human, attempt to transport the humans off-world, pending the destruction of their planet. Dan, one such human, is saved by his Lupari, Carvanista, a former operative of Division, as well as the companion of the Fugitive Doctor. Tracking energy readings from her TARDIS, the Doctor confronts Dan and Carvanista, rescuing Dan and working with Carvanista to shield the Earth from the Flux by commanding every Lupari spacecraft to shield the Earth from the Flux. The TARDIS is then attacked by the Flux and... well, it's not even destroyed because it's there in War of the Sontarans. Dude, this never gets explained. I guess Harry Potter apparated in and saved the Doctor and friends, transporting them to the battlefield of the Crimean War. Doctor Who Flux proceeds to have a Sontaran story that barely matters. Yaz and Dan, who magically disappear from the scene to have subplots, get sent to the Temple of Atropos and modern-day Earth respectively. Dan's subplot does not matter, but Yaz's does quite a bit because it's here that the Temple of Atropos is introduced, a temple that houses the Mori, beings that control the flow of time. Vinder, a new character, also joins Yaz in this scene where they putter around the temple for 45 minutes. Once the Doctor gets done with her pointless Sontaran adventure, she makes her way to the Temple of Atropos with Dan to encounter Swarm and Azure, beings that have a history of conflict with the Timeless Doctors, now holding Vinder and Yaz hostage, not before killing the Mori and destroying time or something. The Doctor, in the span of a microsecond, saves everyone, but through a series of very confusing cuts that does not get explained, the Doctor and friends get transported to their own pasts so the audience has an excuse to learn about them. We see the Siege of Atropos, where the fugitive doctor first encountered Swarm and Azur. We see Vinder's encounter with the Grand Serpent. Dan's history with Diane. Why is this in the episode again? After all this nonsense, the Weeping Angels, who have now sniffed out the Doctor's position, attempt to secure her and transport her to Division and Tectayun. Our characters put up a noble fight, but the Angels win in the end. The Doctor is transported to Division, and the companions inexplicably travel the world for 2 years in an attempt to return to the present day. They eventually do when Joseph Williamson, a man who has occasionally cropped up throughout Flux, very briefly barges into the scene, where Dan explains that he's the man behind the Williamson tunnels, a real thing that does not actually have the power of time travel. But it does in Doctor Who Flux. So the companions use said doors to return to the present day. The Doctor, who at this point has met Tectayun and discovered all the secrets we already know, discovers a fob watch, which Tectayun explains contains the Doctor's memories. Swarm and Azur then come in even though they were not invited, kill Tectayun, and the Doctor removes her conversion plate in the hopes that it will allow her to escape. Instead of returning her to the universe safely, through some anomaly, the Doctor is instead split into 3 different versions of herself that all happen to appear right where they need to be for the plot to resolve. Swarm and Azur dilly-dally just long enough for the other 2 Doctors to meet each other, defeat the Grand Serpent, defeat the Sontarans who are here for some reason, defeat the Cybermen and Daleks who are also here, as well as defeat the Flux. The Ravagers teleport to the Temple of Atropos and meet Time in its physical form, where it scolds the Ravagers, promptly kills them, and leaves the fob watch for the Doctor to retrieve. Time then assumes the form of the Doctor, alludes to the 13th Doctor's eventual regeneration in the Jodie Whittaker specials, and the Doctor leaves with the fob watch, which she decides doesn't need to be opened. She casts it far into the TARDIS, with the secret of the Timeless Doctors to be revealed later. Or maybe not. Who knows. So that's Flux. I'll sum up my thoughts now. Was it a huge improvement from the past? No, in my opinion. Biggest point of damnation is the Temple of Atropos and the desire to give Time a voice. Time is not a person. Time is not a living being in any way. It does not have a voice. It is a force of nature. It's about as daft as giving gravity a voice, only for it to say, "Oh, I pull things to the ground, it's fun." So that was an idea that sank Flux wholesale for me. The Division stuff, while a cobweb of lore retconning that still feels the reverberations of Timeless Child, was a far better idea for Flux that should have been the focus. And I can tell you now, having watched the whole thing, the inclusion of the temple was exactly 0% needed and broke exactly 100% of the established function of time in the history of Doctor Who. And that genuinely aggravated me. Characters are better on a micro scale, but not on a macro scale. Largely, the Doctor and friends are all the same. The Doctor genuinely felt the exact same, which depressed me the more and more I realized that was the case on an initial watching. We know just enough about the characters to gain a fuzzy picture of them, and then get nothing else past their introductory scenes, and Dan is no different. I'm a sucker for sad, wise old men, apparently, so I can't really see myself liking Dan over Graham, but Dan is probably the best companion of Chibnall's. I still don't find him particularly good or fun, just unbearably average. Dan was the character that Flux needed, but he was ruined by Chibnall's inability to characterize consistently through the story's drama. Far more fun characters exist in Flux, though, most notably with Carvanista, Jericho, and Vinder, with an honorary mention of Bell. They're all surprisingly well characterized, and their overshadowing of Flux's actual companion was really surprising. Still, there wasn't much depth to any of it. The stories were by far the most disappointing facet of Flux, mainly because it felt like more of what I'd already seen. War of the Sontarans was clouded with Chibnall's typical confused writing. Once Upon Time tried to make a gimmicky idea carry the serialization for 50 minutes of runtime. The Vanquishers repeated Flux's already uninteresting ideas, but with even more lazy writing to create a lackluster finale in many people's eyes. I won't waffle on about them because there's only 6 of them and I've done exactly that already. I don't think any of them hold a candle to Villa Diodati, which, again, is only Gridlock levels of good. I'm not a fan of The Timeless Child, I'm not a fan of The Division, and super secret past lives and this whole story about the Doctor not knowing who she is. It feels hilariously rushed and uncompelling, considering how it was awkwardly jammed into the story. So Flux, in a large sense, really disappointed me in terms of course correction. Reverse engineering Timeless Child, dispelling the retcons, and setting the stage for Series 14. Instead, Flux was the inverse. Not just a lack of observation, but a direct reinforcement of Timeless Child many times throughout its run. As the episodes got on and I got used to it, I accepted Division for what it was more openly, despite how much I hate the Timeless Child. The crux of my feelings, I enjoyed some aspects of Division until I took a step back and remembered the sin that launched this story. My ultimatum? Episodes are still bad, characters are still largely disappointing, but the serialization is a toss-up for me. Chibnall caliber still? Without a doubt, but probably his best so far, with the largest quotation marks imaginable. I can absolutely see how this series deeply offended you if you are in that camp, though. I just can't seem to break my MK Ultra programming, apparently, when it comes to Division. It goes there for me. So much of the discussion has become law now, which is suffocating. I feel this seclusion is something that should have never happened, this alienation of the Doctor Who fandom. The Jodie Whittaker seasons are hot garbage, says everyone, and the conglomeration that is the origin of this fact has lost its voice. It's become a cesspit of online hatred, people using it to justify the fact that they simply don't like the Chibnall run. Why, I ask, to get nothing other than, well, because it's bad in response. Yes, the Chibnall run is bad. It's a resounding and unequivocal yes from me. But belly aching is no solution. Death threats and hate mail and endless cacophony do nothing but dissuade the masses from the fundamental rules of critique, as I did last year. I urge everyone to find a voice in their complaints. We learn nothing as humans in letting hatred fuel us. I've come to terms in some ways with the Chibnall era. I don't hate Chris Chibnall because he's a person. I hate what he has done with Doctor Who, but at least he tried something new. I genuinely give him brownie points for that. We still have the Jodie Whittaker specials to look forward to, paving the way for Russell T Davies' Series 14. Where Doctor Who goes from here, I know not. The future holds much uncertainty, and while my time with Chibnall series has been an insufferable experience, the heart of Doctor Who lives on. It is clear as day. This is an all-time low of a divot we live in now, but Doctor Who's prosperous future is as set in stone as it was back in 2008. Hope is on the horizon, and I have to thank Chris Chibnall for creating an era of Doctor Who that fans around the globe can unanimously say, yes, it's bad, and I love it for that. The Chibnall era was the reality check that we all needed, something to make us all see how much we truly took the old series for granted. The greatest teacher failure is. So I urge all of you watching to try. Take something away from the Chibnall era aside from blindly hating it. If you love it, good for you. I respect and envy that love because I sure don't feel it. And if you hate it, as do I, discover why. I hope this chapter did exactly that. Man, this is it. How do I sum up everything that makes Doctor Who a definitive part of my character? I guess I can start by saying that I consider art to be the single most important facet of human existence because it's a vessel of self-expression that helps us as humans connect and live together. And I think to explain this, I'll read an excerpt from my college application essay, a paper on exactly this, the importance of art. The experience of art is, in the end, a journey to find the truth of ourselves, a declaration that encapsulates perfectly where exactly art's importance is found, further affirmed with a rhetorical question. What exactly do we hope to achieve in this life? To be an artist is to be a storyteller, with layers of paint masking its intimate answers. It is not in the story of the art, nor the story of its journey, but rather within the stories of those that take away from it that its worth becomes everlasting. Art lives in the connection between the artist and his fellow man. It exists with no gate, for everyone must be let in. It speaks to me in a really profound way, the concept of storytelling never shying away from my interests. Art is everything to me, the ultimatum of life itself. Not just in painting or in writing, but all of art and all of its forms. They all have the capacity for empathy and love and importance. A tapestry of carefully planned paint strokes of people once close to me, a musical piece that overwhelms the senses in an impeccable crescendo, an unforgettable performance that reflects the feelings that we've all felt in our lives, a frame in a scene that feels picturesque and surreal, and stories about people that teach us something about ourselves. And my journey into the world of art began with Doctor Who. It's been a part of me for as long as I can remember. The most fuzzy memory I have is of me at about 6 or 7 watching the Doctor sit down on a bus seat and wish Michelle Ryan Happy Easter. Back then, the show immediately captured my imagination, as I'm sure it did for most other kids. Ever since then, I've been an unconditional fan. I watched religiously with my family. It was a definitive part of my life, legitimately. I've grown up with the show, and even today, it still amazes me. Those childhood memories of watching the show every Saturday night, eagerly awaiting each episode, finally resurfaced. Having Doctor Who merchandise all over my room, writing my own stories based on the show, I'm convinced its influence is why I'm so fond of the arts and self-expression. The vessel of Doctor Who and its immortality felt its grip on me, and ever since those days, I've never been the same. The inspiration and wonder the show gave me was infectious. I remember playing out episodes in my imagination, dancing around my room in an ill-fitting tweed jacket and clip-on bow tie, since I didn't know how to actually tie one. I treasure those memories extremely fondly. The Doctor was my hero, and I deeply loved, and still love the show with all my heart. I probably have and continue to give everyone that comes within 5 feet of me earaches from how integral it was to my life. I couldn't wait to see the Doctor show all the bad aliens who's boss. The magic, the adventures, and more specifically the characters held a place in my heart. The Doctor, first and foremost, of course. All the show's delicate creases and folds compelled me to pursue a virtuous lifestyle as I grew up, so much so that I still use the show to stay a strong person to this day. All of Doctor Who's beautiful turns of phrase, all of its themes and characters, to never be cruel or cowardly, to help anyone no matter what. Without hope, without witness, without reward. These are lessons that actually mean something, not just anthems he calls upon when it's time to do the right thing. It was through Doctor Who's grandiose presentation and intimate finesse in portraying these things that the true beauty and nobility was shown to me. The Doctor, an unending, fiery role model throughout my life, showed me exactly that. How truly difficult it is to be a good person. And the Doctor may break a few times, but the moral of the story is that he never gives up. That tells me that even if I break, never give up on trying to be a good person. It was the Doctor who taught that to me. God, I sound like Rose.
The Doctor showed me a better way of living your life.
It provided fun entertainment every week in my childhood that kept me pressed on doing the right thing, and continues to keep me steadfast to it in my adolescence. But at the same time, it's not so black and white. The beauty in this life isn't that we become better people, but rather, as Sarah Jane put it,
pain and loss, they define us as much as happiness or love.
The beauty in this life isn't just that we become better people, but rather that we become better people through the lows and the suffering. Life cannot exist without the other. It would have no meaning, no importance. And Doctor Who exhibits that aspect of life elegantly and sincerely, with heart and emotion and excitement and passion and love, touching the hearts of millions of other people like me. Doctor Who has always used the facade of subtext to hide a more complex story within, and there's subtext right in its description. Doctor Who is not a sci-fi, but a parallel to life. Everything about life, what makes it great, what makes it horrible, what makes it scary and sad and confusing, but above all else, what makes it a spectacle. There are worlds out there dripping with adventure, but the world right outside your door is just as exciting. The ultimatum of life itself is art, all of art, and all of its forms. A musical piece that overwhelms the senses in an impeccable crescendo, an unforgettable performance that reflects the feelings that we've all felt in our lives, a frame in a scene that feels picturesque and surreal, and of course, stories that take us on fantastical journeys with compelling characters and interesting sci-fi concepts to discover who we are and where we belong. Stories that teach us lessons about life and loss. Stories that tell tales of morality and decisions. Stories that speak of the importance of fear and the strength of compassion. Stories that show the intimacy of love and the value of nobility. Doctor Who strives to inspire everyone out there to be the best person they can be, to take your life and make it amazing. And it's also a metaphor for death, an exciting sci-fi kids show, a religious family program, a comedy, a horror, a soap opera, and above all else, a drama. Life, but with the dull bits cut out. All wrapped into a brilliant sci-fi epic spanning 58 years, 54 companions, 39 seasons, 16 TARDISes, 13 Doctors, 10 sonic screwdrivers, and one unending story. That's Doctor Who, and why it is the best show on TV.
Doctor, my friend,
We have fought monsters together and we have won. On my own, I fear I may not do as well.
I left Gallifrey to answer a question of my own. By any analysis, evil should always win. Good is not a practical survival strategy.
How far?
It requires loyalty, self-sacrifice, and love.
Some things are worth getting your heart broken for.
Halfway out of the
Pain and loss, they define us as much as happiness or love.
Two sides, one coin.
So all of time and all of space.
The inside's bigger than the outside.
This is the gateway to everything that ever
The
was.
spaceship's made of wood.
Or ever can be.
You're an alien.
Yeah. Humany woomany.
I can dance.
Traveling with you made me feel really special.
Onwards?
Onwards. Thank you for that.
Oh, and thank you.
It's always you and her, isn't it? Long after the rest of us have gone.
What, in the end, are any of us looking for? We're looking for someone.
Happy crying.
Afterward, by Amelia Williams. Hello, old friend. And here we are.
The Singing Towers of Deridium. Here we are at last.
You and me, on the last page.
You know what the hardest thing about knowing you was? Letting you go.
By the time you read these words, Rory and I will be long gone. So know that we lived well and we're very happy. And above all else, know that we will love you always. I think once we're gone, you won't be coming back here for a while. And you might be alone.
So lonely, so very, very alone.
Which you should never be.
Things end. That's all.
Such a lonely little boy. Lonely then and lonelier now.
Everything ends.
How can you bear it?
There's always sad.
Don't be alone, Doctor.
Find someone.
But everything begins again too. And that's always happy.
Doctor, it's time.
Be happy.
You act like such a lonely
You
man.
didn't know I was coming. Why would you set me up?
Oh, because we always do. But look at you. You've got the biggest family on earth.
The daft old man who stole the magic box. Come with me.
Whenever, anywhere in time and space.
Where do you want to start?
I'm just a bloke in a box.
I'm not a hero. At the times we had, eh?
How could anything compare to that?
You are completely impossible.
You've turned out to be the first Doctor ever actually to make a difference to my life.
I was gonna be with you.
Was it worth
Shut up. Of course it was. Forever.
it? Lived too long.
Please don't change.
Doctor, I let you go.
Boom! See that number right there? You know what that means, right? I wrote a script for this part of the video, but I'm deciding not going to use it. Thank you for watching, seriously. To dedicate 3 hours of your time to get to this point right now and hear me say this to you is just so, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. This is a video that I wanted to make so badly. I wanted to make it last year, but I was so horribly inexperienced in every facet of making the video. When I set out to make this one, I just wanted to expand it in so many ways. I had seen, more people. I watch video essays regularly. That's one of the bigger reasons that I actually started this whole thing. But after taking a closer look at just how much effort some of my fellow video essayists have put into their work, I decided my video essay was just not good enough. I could do better. So I set 2 months of my time away. I dedicated myself fully to editing this video almost every day. The last hour of this video was edited in 5 days, which was very stressful. It's been the most chaotic Christmas for me, but I love Doctor Who so much, and this was an absolute joy of a time. So if you've made it this far, if you enjoy what I've had to say, if you think anything I said had any worth at all, please like the video. Comment especially, because I want to hear what you guys think. Just do everything in your power to push this video out there. Don't let it get buried by the algorithm so more people can find it and love it. Share it with your friends, spread the word, do all that dumb stuff that I talked about at the beginning. I am not monetizing this video. I just want people to find it and love it. I put so much into this. It helps me so much. And of course, the big one, subscribing. It's free, you can unsubscribe at any time. If you would like to, please do, it helps me a lot. To put my type of content into perspective, I think Pyrocynical is probably the most similar to my type of video style right now, and what I'm going for. The long-form media criticism on the side every couple months, and then the smaller content. For him, it's commentary, and for me, it's probably going to be gaming. Other inspirations are The Act Man, Jayetsky, definitely, Clever Dick Films, obviously, Full Fat Videos, Liam Triforce, and then Jay Schlatt's old gaming videos before he switched to commentary. If you watch any of those gentlemen, I'm very similar in style, I feel. If that's not enough, here, have a comprehensive list of everything that I love. Of those, the ones that I'm most likely to make long-form video essays on are, well, the biggest one is Half-Life. I love Half-Life. I got into that whole Valve scene pretty recently, like last year or the year before, and I love those games. I love every single Half-Life game to death. I love what Valve does. I can't wait for Half-Life 3. I will absolutely at some point make a 3-hour video essay on those games. Portal is a pretty big one too, the Zelda games, Minecraft, Subnautica for sure, BioShock maybe, the Resident Evil games, the Spider-Man movies when I feel like it. Oh, and Call of Duty Zombies. I know, right? You would have never expected it. Yeah, I love COD Zombies. I have ever since I was 12, 13, when I got my first Xbox, playing BO3 with Dylan and Caden. Caden's the one that passed away. But yeah, I'm an uber fan of zombies. I love it to death. Maybe a video essay on them, probably just streaming them. I just want this whole discussion, I don't want a wall there. There's no reason for it, because you guys are just like me. Art is the most important facet of human existence, and if you feel the same unyielding passion to create like I do, go make it. Light the world up. Make the Doctor proud. It is so important. Thank you for watching. It means the world.